Imagine a room wrapped in the soft velvet heavy dark of midnight. The silence is profound, sweeping through the space, save for a deep, rhythmic hum, a steady, vibrating breathing of heat and air that feels like the very heartbeat of the earth itself. Suddenly a heavy iron door opens, not to another room, but into the raw, pulsating heart of a captured star. A brilliant, mesmerizing bloom of liquid amber light spills across the cool stone floor, pushing back the shadows. This is the furnace, roaring with a fierce, contained passion, maintaining a temperature so immense that sand simply surrenders and turns to liquid. At the center of this golden inferno, a material is being born. It is not quite a liquid you can pour, and not quite a solid you can hold. It is pure, glowing potential, shifting and swirling like honey warmed under a summer sun. A long, hollow rod of dark, heavy steel is carefully dipped into this pool of captive sunlight. As the steel turns, slow and deliberate, it gathers a thick dollop of liquid fire, winding the glowing, viscous glass around its tip. The brilliant orange glare reflects off the surrounding walls, painting the heavy air with warmth, casting dancing, elongated silhouettes that stretch and bend with every rotation. The radiant heat washes over the room, wrapping around you like a heavy, comforting blanket, melting away the lingering chill of the waking world, softening the sharp edges of your daytime thoughts. Here, in this sacred, ancient dance of fire and breath, time entirely ceases to exist. There is only the glow. There is only the slow, mesmerizing rotation of the steel pipe. You do not need to try to remember. Your subconscious mind is a vast, limitless library. It will effortlessly absorb these 101 truths while you rest. Just let go. Allow the deep, rhythmic warmth of the furnace to loosen your muscles. Allow the steady, predictable spinning of the glass to quiet your racing mind. You're completely safe here, comfortably watching the light shape itself in the dark. As the rod is slowly pulled from the flames, the molten gather comes with it, radiating a brilliant searing yellow that slowly, imperceptibly, begins to deepen into a sunset orange. This is where the magic truly begins, in the seamless transition from raw, chaotic heat to crystalline stillness. The air itself seems to hold its breath as the artist gracefully lifts the heavy pipe, bringing the cool steel mouthpiece to their lips. With a single, steady exhalation, a pocket of air travels down the dark steel corridor of the pipe, pressing gently but firmly into the dead center of the molten star. The glowing mass expands, swelling outward like a lung drawing its very first vital breath. As it grows larger, the fierce orange surface begins to meet the cool air of the room, and its temperature drops, shifting through a mesmerizing spectrum of ripe cherry red into a dull, mysterious, glowing crimson. What you're watching in this fading light is not the freezing of a solid object, but a beautiful eternal state of suspension. This glowing bubble is what is known as an amorphous solid, a unique, hybrid substance that holds the rigid, unyielding shape of a crystal, but secretly harbours the chaotic, flowing, randomised molecular structure of a liquid. It is a paradox born of rapid, shocking cooling, a material essentially frozen in time before its moving atoms could ever find their perfect, orderly alignment. It is a liquid that has simply forgotten how to flow, trapped forever in a state of beautiful hesitation, holding the deeply embedded memory of its molten birth within its perfectly smooth, entirely transparent solid walls. This deep memory of heat is as ancient as the planet itself. Long before human breath ever touched a metal blowpipe, the Earth was its own master glassblower, operating on a scale of unimaginable power. Deep beneath the heavy continental crust, immense, crushing pressures and staggering temperatures melted solid rock into turbulent, glowing rivers of magma. When these subterranean fires finally erupted through the surface, spilling out into the freezing shock of the open air, or plunging violently into the icy, crushing depths of ancient, prehistoric oceans, the molten rock cooled with violent, immediate suddenness. The spectacular result was obsidian, a dark, gleaming, utterly flawless natural glass. Imagine the stark, breathtaking contrast. A silent landscape of white snow and grey ash, suddenly pierced by jagged, jet-black stones that effortlessly capture the pale moonlight on their razor-sharp, glassy edges. This dark, reflective mirror of the Earth holds absolutely no internal crystalline structure. It is pure, frozen volcanic breath, a beautiful, midnight-coloured sibling to the delicate, transparent vessels shaped by human hands, born of the exact same phenomenon of sudden, arresting stillness. From the violent, fiery birth of obsidian rock, the story softens, drifting quietly like wind-blown sand across the vast, arid deserts of the ancient world. A timeless legend whispers that thousands of years ago, weary Phoenician merchants moored their heavy wooden ships along a lonely, desolate stretch of sandy beach in the Mediterranean. Under the vast, comforting canopy of a star-filled night sky, they built a modest cooking fire to warm themselves. Lacking suitable stones to support their heavy iron cooking pots above the flames, they retrieved blocks of natron, a natural chalky salt they carried as valuable cargo, from the holds of their ships. As the embers glowed a fierce cherry red throughout the long, quiet night, the intense, sustained heat married the melting salt with the silica-rich quartz sand lying directly beneath it. When the pale, blue light of dawn broke across the quiet ocean horizon, they found beneath the cooling grey ashes a strange, hardened river of translucent material, flawlessly capturing the morning light. Whether born by accident on that specific quiet beach or cultivated in the dusty, meticulously tended kilns of ancient Mesopotamia, it was a moment of profound earthly alchemy. Ordinary sand, common ash, and pure fire uniting to create something entirely new, a brilliant jewel born directly from the ordinary dust of the earth. For many long, quiet centuries, this precious, newly born material was thick, heavy, and largely opaque, painstakingly sculpted around fragile cores of mud and clay in slow, laborious, deliberate rituals. But just as a sudden, gentle breeze transforms the surface of a still pond into a mesmerizing canvas of ripples, the sudden invention of the blowpipe revolutionized the entire craft. It emerged in the dusty, sun-baked, smoke-filled workshops of the Syrian coast, shortly before the vast dawn of the Roman Empire. A simple, hollow iron tube elegantly became a direct bridge between the artist's expanding lungs and the molten, glowing earth. With this hollow reed of metal, glass was no longer just packed and moulded, it was inflated. It was miraculously given interior volume, hollowed out from the inside by the invisible, life-giving force of human breath. The heavy, dark material suddenly became gossamer thin, stretching out to capture the ambient light, holding empty space within its walls. A glassblower could now spin, swing, and shape the glowing gather with the fluid grace of a dancer, turning a heavy lump of molten sand into a delicate, fragile bubble that floated and shifted like a frozen soap sphere in the warm, smoky air of the studio. As the absolute mastery of the hollow bubble grew, so did the innate human desire to paint it with the brilliant colours of the natural world. The clear, ice-like purity of unadulterated silica glass is a marvel in itself, but adding just a tiny pinch of stardust transforms it into a mesmerizing kaleidoscope. By carefully sprinkling finely ground metal oxides into the roaring liquid crucible, the molten pool drinks in vibrant eternal hues that will never fade. Cobalt, heavy and dark in your hand, magically turns the liquid into a profound, fathomless sapphire blue, deeply reminiscent of the quietest, darkest ocean trenches. A delicate touch of copper breathes a vibrant, living emerald green into the mix, or, depending on how the fire's atmosphere is managed, a striking, vibrant, glowing red. Gold, the most precious and coveted of all metals, yields a rich, royal ruby colour, a red so incredibly deep and luminous it seems to hold its own internal radiating heartbeat. The hot glass simply becomes a liquid canvas of chemistry, suspending the vibrant oxidized metals in a clear eternal matrix, allowing pure light to pour straight through and cast shifting pools of stained glass colour onto the dusty stone floors. Yet, for all its vibrant, colourful beauty and sudden, ballooning physical growth, this newborn glass is incredibly fragile, fraught with hidden, invisible internal tensions. If a glowing, freshly blown vase were simply left to rest on a cold iron table, the crisp, cool air of the room would violently shock its outer surface. The exterior glass would rapidly shrink and harden, while the thick interior remained hot and swollen, inevitably leading to a sudden, echoing, heartbreaking shatter. To survive its birth, the glass must be gently taught how to rest. It is carefully placed into a warm, dark, heavily insulated secondary oven known as an annealer. Here, in the quiet dark, the temperature is carefully, meticulously lowered over many long hours, sometimes even stretching into days or weeks for massive solid sculptures. This long, gentle twilight allows the vibrating molecules to slowly settle down, finding their final, permanent configuration without any structural stress. It is a slow, comforting embrace, a gradual, peaceful whispering away of the heat, ensuring that when the glass finally meets the cold, waking world, it is physically strong, resilient, completely whole, and perfectly at peace. Before it can ever enter that final, peaceful rest, however, the glass must often be coaxed back to life, repeatedly visiting the wellspring of intense heat to maintain its workability. The artist moves in a slow, hypnotic, swaying rhythm between their wooden workbench and a secondary roaring furnace, intimately known to all blowers as the glory hole. This is a horizontal barrel of pure, intense, concentrated fire, a blinding, perfect circle of yellow-white light that roars with the steady, rhythmic ferocity of a captive dragon. When the glass on the end of the long pipe begins to cool, stiffening and resisting the artist's gentle tools, it is plunged directly back into this radiant, open maw. The overwhelming heat washes over the rigid, cooling surface, quickly softening it once more, making it pliable, forgiving, and entirely ready to be reshaped. It is a deeply mesmerizing, continuous cycle of freezing and thawing, of rigid, unyielding stillness constantly yielding back to liquid grace. The glory hole bathes the entire studio in rhythmic pulses of intense golden light, casting long, swaying shadows that dance endlessly to the deep, resonant, comforting hum of the burning gas. When the glass is finally withdrawn from the flames, glowing fiercely like a miniature captured sun, the artist does not always immediately blow into the pipe. Sometimes, they need to cool the exterior just enough to form a skin, a slightly firmer, cooler layer that will hold the overall shape as the softer interior continues to expand. To achieve this, they gently, smoothly, roll the incandescent mass across a perfectly level, thick slab of cold steel or highly polished marble. This deliberate soothing act is called marvering. As the molten, glowing honey glides effortlessly over the cold, flat surface, it hisses softly, producing a gentle, rhythmic sound exactly like a distant ocean wave slowly breaking on a sandy shore. The physical contact instantly steals away the surface heat, chilling the outer layer while the glowing core remains a soft, molten, moving liquid. The steady rolling motion perfectly centers the gather on the pipe, aligning its heavy mass with the spin of the steel, smoothing out any tiny imperfections, and perfectly preparing the glowing canvas for the intricate pushes and pulls of the metal tools that will soon define its final, elegant silhouette. This incredibly delicate, constant balance of heat and cold, of internal tension and outward release, can sometimes produce objects of almost magical, unbelievable properties. Consider the fascinating anomaly of the Prince Rupert's drop, a small tear-shaped droplet of glass born from simply dropping a single bead of completely molten silica directly into a deep bucket of ice-cold water. The sudden, violent plunge creates an extreme, immediate chill on the outside, forming a violently compressed, incredibly dense outer shell, while the hot interior cools much more slowly, constantly pulling inward on itself as it shrinks. This creates an unimaginable, locked-in internal tension. The bulbous, rounded head of the drop becomes practically indestructible. It can easily withstand the forceful, direct blow of a heavy steel hammer without showing a single microscopic scratch, laughing at the immense pressure. Yet this miraculous, impenetrable strength is perfectly balanced by a profound hidden vulnerability. If you simply apply the absolute slightest pressure to the long, fragile, thread-like tail, snapping the delicate tip, the entire structure instantly, explosively detonates into a soft cloud of harmless, powdery, glittering dust. It is a beautiful, fleeting testament to the powerful, invisible forces permanently locked within the invisible structure of rapid cooled glass. Because of this unique flowing atomic structure, there is a lingering romantic whisper that glass, because it is an amorphous solid, never truly stops moving. People walk through ancient, quiet cathedrals, looking up at the beautiful rippled panes of stained glass windows, visibly noticing they are thicker at the bottom than at the top, and they believe the glass has been slowly, imperceptibly flowing downward like cold, thick honey over the centuries. But the gentle, true reality is found not in gravity, but in the hands of the ancient craftspeople who made it. The traditional crown glass method of the past involved spinning a glowing globe of hot glass into a wide, flat, circular disc. Due to the centrifugal force of the spin, this disc was naturally, inherently thicker near its centre and much thinner at its outer edges. When these varied discs were carefully cut into rectangular panes for building, the practical glaziers simply preferred to place the heavier, thicker edge at the bottom for structural stability. The glass in those quiet, sunlit cathedrals is, in fact, perfectly still. It is a frozen, flawless photograph of a spinning disc, permanently capturing the fluid motion of the artist's hands from hundreds of years ago, holding its shape in peaceful, eternal silence, completely undisturbed, just as you hold your peace in this quiet, restful moment. The peaceful, undisturbed silence of that ancient cathedral pane mirrors the deep velvet quiet of the cosmos, a cold, vast emptiness where another, far more resilient form of this miraculous material finds its ultimate purpose. By delicately infusing the glowing molten silica with the pale, earthy element of boron, the glass fundamentally alters its own internal architecture, vastly expanding its tolerance for extreme, sudden shifts in temperature. This quiet alchemy creates borosilicate, a steadfast, unyielding guardian that refuses to shatter or break, even when plunged directly from the searing, blinding heat of a sunlit orbital trajectory into the freezing absolute shadow of a celestial body. It is the precise, flawless glass that lines the heavy, protective windows of floating spacecraft and the delicate, curved bellies of scientific flasks, holding violent chemical storms and stellar extremes with an impossible, unshakable calm. It simply absorbs the profound shocks of the physical universe, remaining perfectly clear, perfectly intact, guarding the fragile life within. The resilience of this cosmic glass leaves no trace, yet the traditional fiery birth of an object shaped by human hands always leaves a singular, beautiful memory. When the artisan is ready to separate their newly formed glowing vessel from the hollow blowpipe, they must attach a solid, secondary iron rod to its base, the punty. A small, fiery bead of fresh glass acts as a temporary glowing glue, holding the delicate bottom of the piece, while the top is cracked free and opened wide to the air. Once the final elegant lip is spun and smoothed, A single, sharp tap on the cold iron breaks this temporary bond. What remains on the very bottom of the finished resting vessel is a small fractured scar, a pontil mark. It is a slightly rough indented circle, an eternal physical footprint of the iron rod that once held it suspended in the roaring flames. Running your thumb over this subtle, frosted ridge in the dark is like tracing a gentle, tactile signature, a quiet confirmation that this smooth, perfect form was once a wild, spinning liquid, tamed by breath and gravity. And as this knowledge settles, your breathing slows, deepening into a steady, comforting rhythm, perfectly aligned with the slow, eternal spin of the artisan's wheel. The texture of this hidden, tactile scar leads us down a darker, more mysterious path into a realm where the glass itself holds a secret, invisible fire. In the late 19th century, glassmakers discovered that adding a tiny, measured whisper of uranium oxide to the molten batch created a pale, translucent material with a soft, yellowish-green tint. In the bright light of the sun, it appears as delicate and unassuming as a drop of morning dew resting on a blade of grass. Yet, when bathed in the invisible, unseen spectrum of ultraviolet light, this ordinary-seeming vessel suddenly awakens. The dormant uranium atoms absorb the invisible energy and re-emit it as a brilliant, ghostly neon-green luminescence, a phenomenon known as fluorescence. In the dark, the glass glows from within, radiating a mesmerizing, ethereal light that seems completely detached from the physical world. It is as if the glass has captured a small, glowing fragment of the aurora borealis, holding it suspended in a permanent crystalline slumber, softly illuminating the shadows of a quiet room. While the eerie green light fades slowly back into the heavy dark, it brightens instantly in a bustling, vibrant garden of frozen miniature blooms. Imagine a thick, glowing rod of hot glass, layered meticulously with alternating rings of deep blues, opaque whites, and vivid, striking reds. While it is still searingly hot and utterly pliable, two glassblowers grasp opposite ends of this heavy, colourful log and walk slowly backward, stretching the molten mass across the wooden floor of the studio into a long, incredibly thin, rigid cane. Miraculously, as the glass stretches and thins, the intricate internal pattern of colours shrinks perfectly in scale, maintaining its precise geometry. When this long, cooled cane is sliced into tiny cross-sectional discs, each flat piece reveals a perfect microscopic flower locked within the glass. This ancient meticulous technique is called millefiori, a beautiful Italian word translating to 1,000 flowers. These tiny glassy blossoms are carefully arranged, fused together in a warm kiln, and encased in clear crystal, creating a vibrant, eternal meadow that requires no water, no sunlight, and will never, ever fade. The thought of these eternal, waterless flowers naturally summons the memory of a delicate vessel designed specifically to hold the waters of human sorrow. Deep in the ruins of the ancient Roman Empire, archaeologists continually unearth small, impossibly fragile glass vials with long, slender necks and wide, teardrop-shaped bases. Romantic legend has long whispered that these delicate, iridescent bottles, known as lacrimatoria or tear catchers, were held closely to the cheeks of grieving widows, capturing their physical tears as a deep, profound testament of love for the departed. The reality of their historical use for precious perfumes and fragrant anointing oils does absolutely nothing to diminish their poetic, melancholic beauty. They are gossamer-thin shells of blown sand, buried in the dark earth for thousands of years, their surfaces slowly reacting with the damp soil to form a breathtaking rainbow-coloured patina. They are physical containers for human emotion, fragile, shimmering ghosts resting peacefully in the silent, comforting embrace of the ancient dust. Letting go of the past, you feel your muscles soften, heavy and relaxed, as the quiet weight of the night wraps around you, safe and profoundly calm. Echoing this underground silence is a specialized modern glass designed not to capture human tears, but to completely veil the brilliant, blinding light of the visible world. Born in the quiet laboratories of the early 20th century, Wood's glass is an incredibly dark, deeply saturated barium-sodium silicate glass, heavily doped with nickel oxide. To the naked, waking eye, it appears as an impenetrable, glossy black, a void that completely swallows the light of the sun and the glow of the lamp. Yet, its true nature is one of selective, invisible permission. While it staunchly blocks almost all visible light from passing through its dark walls, it is completely, perfectly transparent to the invisible wavelengths of ultraviolet and infrared radiation. It is a filter of pure shadow, a dark curtain that parts only for the unseen forces of the electromagnetic spectrum, allowing the invisible to travel freely while keeping the glaring, noisy light of the day permanently locked away in the dark. This invisible light stretching out through the pitch-black void mirrors the miraculous way glass itself can be drawn into a single, infinite guiding thread. If you take a rod of the purest, most flawless silica glass so utterly transparent that a block of it 10 miles thick would look as clear as an open window, and heat its tip to a brilliant glowing white, you can pull a fibre from it that is thinner than a single strand of human hair. This microscopic, flexible thread of solid glass becomes an optical waveguide, a trapped, mirrored corridor where light cannot escape. When a pulse of laser light is flashed into one end, it bounces endlessly along the internal walls, travelling thousands of miles across the dark ocean floor in a fraction of a heartbeat. These delicate, glowing threads of drawn sand are the nervous system of the modern world, carrying every whispered voice, every digital image, and every vast library of human knowledge across the globe through a quiet, blinking pulse of pure light. Your mind drifts along these endless, glowing rivers of light. Feeling completely weightless, completely untethered, sinking deeper into a profound, restorative rest. Where these threads of light reach the edges of the vast rolling ocean, they meet their ancient ancestral origins, smoothed by the relentless rhythmic passage of time. When shattered, discarded pieces of human-made glass, the green of an old wine bottle, the cobalt blue of an apothecary jar, the clear remnants of a shattered window, are surrendered to the restless waves, they undergo a beautiful, decades-long baptism. The violent crashing surf and the abrasive, biting grains of sea sand tumble these jagged, dangerous shards against the rocky shorelines for years upon years. The sharp, threatening edges are slowly, lovingly worn away. The glossy, reflective surfaces are heavily pitted and frosted, transforming into soft, glowing, translucent gems known as sea glass. It is a profound act of natural forgiveness. The ocean takes the broken, discarded, and sharp remnants of human industry and patiently, softly sculpts them back into beautiful, harmless stones, returning them to the beach as smooth, frosted gifts, entirely reshaped by the slow, eternal breathing of the tides. This gentle, watery reshaping stands in stark, breathtaking contrast to the violent, instantaneous creation of glass born from the sky. When a towering, dark storm cloud unleashes a massive, jagged bolt of lightning, the electrical discharge strikes the earth with a temperature hotter than the surface of the sun. If that terrifying, blinding strike happens to hit a beach of pure, dry silica sand, the intense, unimaginable heat instantly vaporizes the moisture and melts the surrounding sand grains in a fraction of a second. The lightning literally fuses its own chaotic branching path deep into the earth, creating a hollow, fragile tube of rough, glassy material called a fulgurite. Also known as petrified lightning, these delicate subterranean roots of glass are a physical frozen cast of an electrical strike. They are the quiet, hardened remnants of a violent storm, capturing the exact branching shape of an ephemeral flash of energy and locking it permanently into a solid, hollow, brittle stone buried deep beneath the dunes. The blinding flash of that ancient lightning returns us to the stars, captured within a glass that shifts and dances with the very essence of colour itself. Originally developed to shield the sensitive optical instruments of spacebound satellites from the harsh, unfiltered radiation of the sun, dichroic glass is a modern marvel of microscopic engineering. In a vacuum chamber devoid of all air, impossibly thin, vaporized layers of rare metal oxides, titanium, silicon, magnesium, are blasted onto the surface of a clear glass sheet. These layers are so infinitesimally thin that they interfere with the very wavelengths of light itself. As you slowly turn a piece of dichroic glass in your hand, its colour completely transforms before your eyes. It might reflect a brilliant shimmering magenta to the viewer, while simultaneously transmitting a deep, vibrant cyan to the shadow cast behind it. It does not absorb light, it sorts it, bends it, and plays with it, creating a fluid, ever-changing puddle of iridescent colour that seems to shift and breathe with every microscopic movement, fading slowly back into the restful heavy dark. The restful heavy dark is a perfect, flawless canvas, a quiet emptiness just waiting to be patiently revealed. Imagine a thick, solid vessel blown from glass the exact colour of a starless midnight sky. While it is still glowing with a latent internal heat, it is completely submerged into a crucible of stark, bone-white molten silica. When withdrawn, the dark, heavy core is entirely entombed in a glowing white shell. After the long, slow, comforting sleep in the cooling annealer, the vessel emerges into the light cold, rigid, and completely opaque. Now the roaring, fiery breath of the furnace is entirely replaced by the slow, meticulous, scratching rhythm of the engraver's wheel. The artisan begins to carve, cutting away the white outer layer grain by grain, millimetre by microscopic millimetre. Where the white glass is left thick, it remains a brilliant opaque ivory. Where it is carved dangerously thin, the dark, shadowy blue from beneath begins to bleed through, creating ghostly ethereal shades of violet and grey. This is cameo glass, a breathtaking technique of subtracting light to find the true form beneath. It is a slow, meditative peeling away of the surface, discovering the dark, quiet truth hidden just beneath the pale, unyielding skin. The meticulous, dusty precision of this slow carving gives way to a delicate woven net of pure, unadulterated light. Deep within the sweltering, watery labyrinth of the Venetian lagoon, master glassblowers developed a technique of dizzying, mind-altering complexity known as reticello. Imagine a glowing, hollow bubble of completely clear glass, wrapped perfectly in a tight, spiralling cage of milk-white canes, all twisting harmoniously to the right. Now imagine a second, identical bubble, but its white canes are twisting in the exact opposite direction, spiralling softly to the left. The artisan, with impossibly steady, confident hands, slips the first glowing bubble directly inside the second. As the two walls of hot, soft glass touch and permanently fuse, the opposing spirals cross over one another, creating a flawless, intricate, diamond-patterned net. But the true, breathtaking magic lies within the negative space, in the exact centre of every single diamond, where the clear glass walls meet. A tiny, microscopic pocket of air is deliberately trapped. These hundreds of perfectly spaced, shimmering silver air bubbles become a permanent, sparkling constellation trapped within the heavy walls of the glass, a frozen lattice of human breath and captured light that holds its shape with an effortless, eternal grace. And as your mind traces these infinite, intersecting lines, your own thoughts begin to unravel, softening and gently detaching, growing incredibly heavy, incredibly still. You're sinking deeper into a profound, unquestioning calm. The texture of this thought leads us to a completely accidental miracle, born of the exact same Venetian fires, a material that perfectly mimics the vast, starry heavens above. It is whispered that centuries ago an exhausted glassmaker accidentally dropped a handful of fine, metallic copper shavings into a vat of dark, cooling, molten glass. It was deemed a careless mistake, a ruined batch left to solidify in the cold dark. But when the solid block was later broken open, the interior revealed a breathtaking, sparkling universe. As the glass had cooled at a slow, incredibly specific rate, the dissolved copper atoms had magically found one another in the dark, precipitating out of the liquid matrix to form millions of tiny, flawless, highly reflective triangular crystals. This is aventurine, a glass named from the melodic Italian word avventura, meaning by chance or by adventure. It is a deep, rich, reddish-brown stone that glitters furiously with an internal golden fire from every conceivable angle. It is a solid piece of the night sky, a heavy, sparkling galaxy you can hold quietly in the palm of your hand, born entirely from a fortunate, beautiful surrender to the unknown. These suspended golden stars float effortlessly within their dark matrix, just as two entirely separate glowing worlds can float through the hot studio air and suddenly, flawlessly merge. This profound act of union is known as encalmo. Imagine the artisans spinning a perfectly round, open bowl of deep, translucent emerald green. The rim is heated until it is soft, glowing, and completely level. An assistant, moving with the synchronized, silent grace of a dancer, brings over a second, identically sized vessel. This one a vibrant, opaque, glowing golden yellow. The two hot lips, spinning perfectly on their parallel steel axes, are brought together in the empty air. With a gentle, deliberate pressure, the open rims touch. In a fraction of a second, the molten molecules intertwine, permanently bonding the green to the yellow in a perfectly straight, razor-sharp horizontal line. There is no glue, no overlapping seam, no hesitation, only a miraculous continuous wall of glass that instantly changes its fundamental nature halfway up the vessel. It is the flawless marriage of two distinct atmospheres, joining together to share a single, beautiful, unified centre of gravity. The perfect, continuous, smooth rim of this joined vessel invites a gentle, tracing touch, a slow, rhythmic movement that awakens a deeply hidden, haunting voice. If you run a wet fingertip slowly and steadily around the rim of a thin crystal goblet, the friction causes the delicate glass walls to vibrate, producing a pure, piercing, angelic tone. In the 18th century, this ethereal singing was harnessed into a mesmerizing hypnotic instrument known as the glass harmonica. Dozens of custom-blown pure crystal bowls of gradually increasing sizes were nested together on a long spinning iron spindle. As the player turned the spindle with a wooden foot pedal, they simply rested their wet, heavy fingertips against the rotating glass. The resulting sound was not a sudden strike, but a long, swelling, continuous hum, an otherworldly echoing chorus of overlapping vibrations that seemed to bypass the ears entirely and resonate directly within the bones, the chest, and the mind. It was a music so impossibly sweet, so deeply strange and resonant that listeners often fell into a deep, inescapable, mesmerized trance. Listening to this phantom resonance in your mind's ear, you feel yourself letting go of all remaining resistance, your slow breathing echoing the long, continuous hum of the singing glass, heavier, safer, drifting entirely away. While the ghostly sound vibrations fade slowly into the heavy, motionless air, a new, tangible layer of beauty is quietly painted upon the silence. The smooth, curved, cold surface of a finished glass vessel is completely impervious to ordinary paints or inks. They would simply bead up and wipe away like ordinary dust. To permanently mark the glass, the artist must use glass itself. This is the ancient, meticulous art of enamelling. Tiny fragments of deeply coloured glass are crushed into an impossibly fine, silky powder, then mixed with heavy, fragrant pine oils to create a thick, vibrant paste. With a delicate brush made of soft animal hair, the artist paints intricate, sweeping vines, golden leaves, and dark, shadowy figures directly onto the cold, curved, translucent canvas. But the painting is merely a temporary, fragile whisper until the vessel is gently returned to the fire. It is placed into a warm kiln where the heat is slowly, steadily raised in the dark. The heavy oils silently burn away into white smoke, and the powdered glass melts, fusing permanently into the surface of the vessel. The painting becomes entirely one with the canvas, a raised, tactile topography of colour that will outlast the hands that painted it by thousands upon thousands of years. The careful, deliberate brushstrokes of powdered glass recall a far more royal, deeply internal chemistry, an obsessive, centuries-long pursuit to capture the absolute perfect shade of crimson. For generations, glassmakers struggled to create a true, deep red that wouldn't turn a muddy, opaque brown in the intense, overwhelming heat of the furnace. The breathtaking answer was ultimately found in the most precious of all earthly materials. By dissolving pure, solid gold in a highly corrosive, dangerous bath of potent acids, they created a mysterious pale yellow liquid. When just a few miraculous drops of this liquid gold chloride are introduced into a massive roaring crucible of clear molten silica, the reaction is pure, breathtaking alchemy. As the gathered glass is blown and begins to slowly cool, the invisible gold nanoparticles suspended within the hot matrix suddenly shift the wavelength of the light passing through them. The clear glass blooms into a stunning, luminous, incredibly rich cranberry red. It is a colour of profound depth and quiet passion, a glowing, ruby-like fire sustained forever by the microscopic, eternal ghost of pure gold. This royal golden red deepens and darkens as it cools, passing quietly through an invisible, truly magical threshold of physics. There is a very specific, quiet moment during the cooling process known as the glass transition temperature. It is a deeply mysterious, liminal twilight zone where the substance cannot quite decide what it is. Above this specific temperature, the hot glass is a supercooled liquid, its molecules sliding past one another in a slow, viscous, honey-like dance. Below this temperature, it becomes an amorphous solid, rigid, unyielding, and totally still. But right at the exact threshold, it exists in a state of profound, beautiful hesitation. It is soft enough to bend without shattering, yet firm enough to hold its shape against the heavy, downward pull of gravity. It is a moment of pure, perfectly balanced limbo. The glass is caught exactly halfway between the chaotic, fiery energy of its violent creation and the cold, silent permanence of its final resting state. An eternal pause between a breath deeply taken in and a breath slowly let out. And in this perfect, balanced twilight zone, you too find a gentle, comforting suspension, caught peacefully between the fading, noisy world of waking and the deep, dark, comforting ocean of sleep. Floating effortlessly in the warm space between thoughts, echoing this twilight suspension is a breathtaking material spun not by the careful, measured breath of a human, but by the ferocious, roaring sigh of the restless earth. High on the black, jagged rims of active shield volcanoes where the crust of the earth breaks open to reveal the glowing magma beneath, the wind itself acts as a master glass blower. When liquid lava violently splatters into the air, fierce gale-force winds catch the tiny glowing droplets of molten rock, stretching them out mid-flight into impossibly long, impossibly thin threads of volcanic glass. These delicate golden-brown strands, sometimes reaching lengths of several feet, drift gently on the rising thermal currents, catching the sunlight like a fragile web of spun gold. They eventually settle across the dark, ashen landscape in soft, shimmering drifts. In ancient Hawaiian mythology, these fragile golden threads are deeply revered as Pele's hair, the beautiful, discarded tresses of the goddess of fire. They're a profound reminder that the Earth is constantly melting, constantly spinning, constantly creating its own delicate, transient art in the roaring heat and the rushing wind. These golden, earthborn threads lift our inward gaze naturally upward, ascending into the vast, incomprehensible, deeply silent dome of the night sky, leading us to the most profound, world-altering capability of a simple, curved piece of glass. If a perfectly clear, flawless block of silica is patiently ground with coarse sand, then smoothed with fine grit, and finally polished with soft felt, its surface can be shaped into a gentle, precise, sweeping curve. This is an optical lens. Because light slows down slightly when it enters the dense, heavy medium of the glass, a curved surface forces the light waves to bend, to gather, and to deeply focus into a single intense point. When two of these cold, polished lenses are placed carefully in a long, dark tube, they perform a true, staggering miracle. They reach millions of miles out into the freezing, empty void of space, grabbing the ancient, faint, travelling light of distant galaxies and dying stars. They bend the infinite, incomprehensible cosmos down, condensing the very universe itself so that it fits perfectly into the quiet, dark, waiting pupil of the human eye, expanding the mind completely into the vast, floating dark. The vast, floating dark of the cosmos finds its exact, infinite reflection in the invisible miniature world hidden within a single drop of pond water. By taking that same perfectly curved, cold optical lens and simply turning its focus downward, away from the distant stars and toward the Earth, the very nature of human perception was shattered and rebuilt. This is the microscope, a silent, illuminated corridor into the microscopic void. A meticulously ground bead of pure, clear silica, no larger than a tiny seed, curves the incoming light with such fierce, concentrated geometry that it tears back the heavy veil of the unseen. Through this quiet, frozen drop of glass, a mundane smear of moss suddenly erupts into a vibrant, shifting, complex forest of cellular life. The glass acts as a profound translator, taking the infinitely small, the completely unseeable, and stretching it across the retina in a brilliant, softly lit halo. It is a portal made of melted sand, effortlessly proving that an entire boundless universe can exist perfectly contained within a space no wider than the edge of a shadow. The mesmerizing, contained depth of that single water drop naturally brings us to a heavy, solid dome of pure, unyielding crystal, the paperweight. Here, the glass is not a lens looking at the world, but a heavy, liquid sky poured directly over it. In the quiet, sweltering lamp-working studios, artisans melt thin, brightly coloured rods of glass over a small, intensely hot, hissing blue flame. With impossibly steady, patient hands, they sculpt tiny, flawless, intricate scenes. A delicate, blooming pink lotus, a coiled emerald green serpent, or a scattering of vibrant oceanic reefs. Once this microscopic, perfectly still diorama is complete, it is carefully, slowly encased in a massive, overwhelming gather of thick, molten, entirely clear crystal. As the clear glass slowly cools and hardens into a smooth, heavy, polished hemisphere, it acts as a permanent magnifying vault. It bends the ambient light of the room, drawing it downward to beautifully illuminate the frozen, delicate world trapped forever inside its heavy, silent, protective walls. The dense, magnifying weight of this solid dome slowly gives way to its exact, breathtaking opposite, a sphere of impossibly thin, almost weightless glass, carrying its own internal liquid moonlight. Imagine a delicate hollow glass bauble, blown so exquisitely thin that a heavy sigh might shatter it. To transform this transparent shell into a brilliant gleaming ornament, the artisan does not paint the outside, but rather works entirely within the dark enclosed hollow. A clear, watery chemical solution of silver nitrate and gentle ammonia is carefully drawn up and injected into the tiny open neck of the glass sphere. When a warm, sugary reducing agent is swirled into the mix, a silent, invisible alchemy occurs in the dark. The dissolved silver suddenly falls out of the liquid, clinging desperately to the smooth inside curvature of the glass wall. In mere seconds, the transparent bubble flashes into a flawless, continuous, brilliantly reflective mirror. It is a captured metallic frost, a skin of pure, gleaming silver perfectly suspended on the interior of a fragile, breathing bubble of air. And as this deep internal reflection settles, your breathing naturally slows, lengthening into a steady, comforting rhythm. You feel the heavy, warm air of the room cradling you, allowing every muscle to completely softly let go. The silvered, curved walls of that delicate sphere gracefully expand and flatten, unrolling into the calm, perfectly still surface of a looking glass. Before the flawless fusion of metal and flat glass, human reflections were muddy, dark and deeply distorted, caught only in the rippling surface of dark pools or heavily polished, easily scratched discs of bronze. But when master glassmakers learned to pour thick molten crystal onto massive flat tables of cast iron, and then painstakingly coat the cooled, polished underside with a thin liquid amalgam of tin and heavy silver mercury, the modern mirror was born. It was a staggering, deeply unsettling revelation. For the very first time in human history, light was bounced back with absolute, unforgiving clarity. The glass itself became entirely invisible, perfectly trapping the light, the shadows, the colours, and the soft, flickering warmth of candlelight, bouncing it back into the room to create the flawless, deeply silent illusion of an entirely separate, echoing world resting just behind the cold, hard surface. The solitary, silvered mirror flawlessly reflects the quiet room, but the ancient towering window must actively invite the outside sun to enter, deliberately breaking the harsh daylight into 1,000 scattered, colourful, floating fragments. In the vast, echoing silence of medieval cathedrals, the stained glass window acts as a massive, glowing, suspended tapestry. But the brilliantly coloured, fragile pieces of glass cannot stand alone against the heavy, pushing wind and the constant weight of gravity. They must be intimately bound together by a dark, flexible skeleton of cold metal. This is the lead came. Long, soft, pliable ribbons of heavy lead, shaped like an intersecting letter, H. The artisan carefully slides the sharp, cut edges of the ruby red, the cobalt blue, and the vibrant golden glass directly into the deep channels of the lead, wrapping the metal around the delicate shards. The heavy, dark lines of the metal completely absorb the light, creating a stark, pitch-black contrast that makes the suspended colours burn with an even fiercer, more radiant, unearthly intensity. The heavy, dark lead lines that intimately bind those colourful panes soon dissolve entirely, giving way to sweeping, impossibly vast architectural arches of pure, clear, unadulterated light. As the roaring fires of the industrial age learned to manufacture colossal, identical sheets of flat, strong glass, the dark, heavy stone walls of traditional buildings began to vanish. Imagine walking into a massive cavernous hall where the ceiling is not made of wood or slate, but of thousands upon thousands of overlapping, shimmering glass panels, all held aloft by a delicate iron lace framework. It is a cathedral dedicated entirely to the sun. The interior is flooded with a soft, diffuse, omnidirectional glow, effectively erasing all harsh shadows and completely blurring the firm, physical boundary between the sheltered interior and the shifting, cloudy sky above. The building ceases to be a barrier. It becomes a perfectly transparent skin, a quiet, monumental envelope that holds the still, warm air while letting the absolute purity of the daylight wash over everything inside. The immense sun-drenched silence of these massive glass palaces beautifully funnels down into a tiny, fragile, perfectly sealed bulb, resting quietly on a dusty wooden desk in a sunlit study. Inside this clear, teardrop-shaped glass chamber, balanced precariously on the sharp point of a needle, is a delicate rotor with 4 tiny feather-like metal veins, one side painted absolute black, the other a brilliant reflective silver. This is the Crookes radiometer, a mesmerizing silent engine driven entirely by the ghost of light. The artisan who blew this bulb carefully sucked almost all the ambient air out of it before sealing the glass tip in the flame, creating a deep, profound, near-perfect vacuum inside. When a beam of warm sunlight strikes the bulb, the dark black sides of the tiny veins absorb the invisible heat, warming the few remaining floating gas molecules. These microscopic molecules violently kick against the black surface, causing the delicate rotor to begin a slow, hypnotic, endless spin, a perpetual frictionless carousel quietly turning in the empty dark, powered only by the gentle touch of a sunbeam. Following the slow, endless spin, your mind simply drifts, letting go of the need to move, the need to think. You're sinking deeper into the heavy velvet dark of profound rest, completely safe, completely still. The spinning, restless motion within the glass vacuum eventually slows to a perfect, eternal stop, mirroring the breathtaking, frozen stillness of a master lampworker's botanical creations. Deep in the quiet, dusty archives of a famous university, there exists a vast collection of flowers that will never wilt, never fade, and never, ever lose a single vibrant petal. They are the glass flowers, created over half a century by a father and son who completely mastered the hissing breath of the torch. Using only heat, gravity, and simple, blackened iron tweezers, they melted, pulled, and manipulated custom-coloured glass to replicate the fragile, ephemeral beauty of nature with an impossible, staggering, microscopic accuracy. They captured the exact powdery texture of a pollen grain, the delicate, translucent veins of a pale green leaf, and the soft, bruised edge of a decaying purple orchid. It is an entire, sprawling garden of earthly delights, permanently paused in time, rendered in pure silica to silently defy the inevitable, heavy decay of the natural world. The meticulous human imitation of nature in hot, flowing glass leads us silently down into the dark, cold, rolling ocean, where nature herself is the most prolific, microscopic glass blower of all. Floating invisibly in the sunlit upper layers of the vast seas are trillions upon trillions of single-celled algae known as diatoms. These microscopic silent drifters do not build their fragile protective shells from calcium or protein. They actively extract dissolved silicic acid directly from the cold seawater, turning it into pure, transparent glass. Each single diatom constructs a pillbox-like shell of breathtaking geometric perfection, completely covered in microscopic pores, ridges, and sweeping, elegant spirals that rival the most intricate, deliberate human-cut crystal. When these tiny living jewels naturally expire, their delicate glass bodies slowly drift down like a gentle, invisible snowfall, raining quietly onto the deep ocean floor for millions of years, forming miles-thick, soft blankets of pure organic glass resting in the pitch-black silence. The microscopic floating glass jewels of the shallow sunlit waters continue to drift downward, sinking slowly into the fathomless, crushing, absolute dark of the deepest ocean trenches. Where a much larger, living glass structure holds fast to the soft, silty bottom, this is the Venus flower basket, a deep-sea sponge that lives entirely without sunlight, anchoring itself in the freezing, high-pressure void. It slowly, patiently extracts silica from the dark water to weave a long, beautifully curved, intricate skeleton of pure glass fibres. This delicate woven cage, perfectly resembling a flawless, transparent, intricate basket, is surprisingly strong, effortlessly withstanding the immense crushing weight of the deep ocean. But its most miraculous secret lies in the long anchoring threads at its base. These natural biological glass fibers perfectly conduct the faint, bioluminescent light of the surrounding deep, acting exactly like the highly advanced human-made fiber optic cables that carry voices across continents. It is a masterpiece of biology, a creature woven entirely from light-bearing glass, sitting perfectly still in the deepest, quietest, most peaceful dark. The profound, undisturbed stillness of the deep ocean floor, where ancient glass sponges hold the faint bioluminescent light, mirrors the vast, freezing emptiness of the cosmos, a place where a very different kind of glass is born from violent celestial impacts. Millions of years ago, when heavy, dense meteorites tore through the Earth's atmosphere, they struck the planet's surface with an unimaginable, terrifying force. The sheer, catastrophic energy of the collision instantly liquefied the terrestrial rock, splashing a massive, soaring fountain of glowing, molten earth high into the upper atmosphere, and sometimes entirely out into the cold vacuum of space. As these liquid droplets were flung into the freezing dark, they rapidly cooled, hardening into strange, aerodynamic, deeply pitted stones before raining quietly back down upon the Earth. These alien, glassy fragments are called tektites. The most beautiful among them is moldavite, a translucent, deeply forested green glass found only in a small, quiet region of Central Europe. It is a stone forged by the fiery marriage of earth and sky, holding within its mysterious rippled surface the kinetic memory of a falling star, permanently cooled by its long, silent plunge through the freezing stratosphere. The texture of this celestial shattered dust leads us softly back into the warm, dusty corners of the artist's studio, where the roaring breath of the furnace is replaced by the quiet, meticulous patience of a sculptor. Instead of gathering liquid fire on the end of a steel pipe, the artist works entirely with cold, fractured light. High-quality, brilliantly coloured glass is crushed, ground and sifted until it becomes as fine as powdered sugar. This coarse, sparkling dust, known as free, is carefully mixed with a temporary liquid binder to create a thick, heavy, shimmering paste. This is pâte de verre, literally translating to a paste of glass. With a delicate tiny brush and steady, unhurried hands, the artist pushes this wet, crystalline sand into the intricate crevices of a deeply carved hollow plaster mould. Once the mould is completely packed, it is placed into a dark, silent kiln. As the temperature slowly, gently rises, the individual grains of coloured dust quietly slump and fuse together, melting just enough to bond into a solid, sugar-like wall without ever becoming a flowing liquid. When the plaster is finally chipped away, what emerges is a vessel of soft, frosted, ethereal beauty, capturing the light not with the sharp, blinding glare of a mirror, but with the gentle, glowing, translucent warmth of morning mist. While the light softly diffuses through the frosted walls of the paste, it travels outward to find an impossibly flat, endless silver horizon. For centuries, producing a perfectly smooth, completely undistorted pane of window glass was an agonizing, laborious struggle against the natural heavy pull of gravity. But in the mid-20th century, a profound, breathtakingly simple solution was born, a process that revolutionized the very way we view the outside world. Imagine a massive, shallow, incredibly long lake of pure, molten tin glowing with a soft, silvery liquid heat. Because glass is inherently lighter than this dense liquid metal, when a continuous roaring river of molten silica is poured directly onto the surface of the tin, it does not sink. It simply floats. It spreads out evenly, effortlessly, seeking its own perfect, natural level across the liquid silver beneath it. The molten tin acts as an impossibly flawless, friction-free mould. As the glowing ribbon of glass is slowly, mechanically pulled along the surface of the metal bath, it gradually cools, emerging as an infinite, continuous sheet of absolute, unparalleled flatness. It is a perfect, rigid membrane of frozen liquid, carrying absolutely no memory of human hands, entirely shaped by the quiet, indisputable laws of physics. And as this perfect silver horizon stretches out endlessly in your mind's eye, your own thoughts level out, becoming incredibly smooth, incredibly flat. Your breathing slows to a deep, even tide, washing away all the tiny accumulated distortions of the day. From the vast, endless flat plain of modern engineering, we journey back down into the deeply shadowed, quiet workshops of the ancient Roman Empire, where patience was measured in years, not hours. Here, artisans achieved a level of sculptural, impossible geometry that still baffles the modern mind, the diatrita, or the cage cup. They began not with a delicate bubble, but with a massive, extraordinarily thick, solid, heavy blank of cast glass. Then, using nothing but rudimentary spinning wheels, coarse sand, and a staggering, monumental reservoir of focus, the artisan began to slowly, grain by grain, carve away the exterior. They dug deep beneath the outer layer, undercutting the solid glass to leave an intricate, highly complex geometric net of intersecting circles, entirely floating outside the main body of the cup. The delicate outer cage remained attached to the inner vessel only by tiny, invisible, deeply hidden struts of original glass. It is a masterpiece of subtractive magic. An object that appears to have an impossible, fragile skin of lace, floating gracefully around its solid core, born entirely from the slow, agonizing, beautiful removal of what was unnecessary. The slow, abrasive removal of that ancient stone naturally summons the memory of an edge so impossibly sharp, it slips straight through the physical world without a whisper. When the earth rapidly cools its own molten rock into deep black obsidian, it creates an amorphous solid entirely devoid of any internal crystalline boundaries. Because there are no microscopic crystal planes to interrupt a fracture, when obsidian is expertly struck, it breaks with a profound, terrifying perfection called a conchoidal fracture. The resulting edge tapers down to a thinness of just a few nanometers, effectively narrowing to the absolute width of a single solitary molecule. This ancient black volcanic glass is hundreds of times sharper than the most advanced, highly polished surgical steel blade ever forged by modern machines. Today, in the quiet, brightly lit, sterile rooms of highly specialized eye surgeries, some doctors still rely on scalpels meticulously knapped from obsidian. The blade is so unbelievably thin, so flawlessly sharp, that it actually passes between individual human cells rather than tearing them apart, leaving almost no microscopic damage, allowing the body to heal in perfect, seamless silence. Echoing this invisible, seamless slicing of the dark is a glass that does not cut, but rather perfectly contains the invisible ghosts of the atmosphere. High above the wet, rain-slicked midnight streets of the city, long, thin, glowing lines of vibrant electric colour hum with a deep, resonant, buzzing energy. To create these captivating, floating lines of neon light, the artisan must completely master the quiet, sweeping manipulation of hollow, clear glass tubes. Working over a fierce, concentrated, hissing ribbon burner, the glass bender softly rotates the tube until it reaches a perfect, yielding, rubbery state. With incredibly smooth, fluid, deliberate motions, they bend the hot glass into sharp angles and sweeping cursive curves, blowing gently into the end to ensure the thin walls never, ever collapse inward. Once the complex twisting maze is completely sealed and pumped entirely free of normal air, a tiny, invisible whisper of purified noble gas, neon for a fiery, burning orange, argon for a cool electric blue, is drawn inside. When a high-voltage current is passed through this silent, sealed vacuum, the invisible gas violently awakens, vibrating and glowing, turning the hollow glass tube into a solid, singing vessel of pure, coloured light. Breathing in the soft, glowing light, You feel your chest rise and fall in perfect rhythmic time with the deep electric hum, letting the warmth spread through your heavy limbs, sinking deeper, floating further away. The humming, electric glow of that captured gas slowly softens and mutates, transitioning into a surface that ripples and shifts with every microscopic movement of the eye. At the dawn of the 20th century, the brilliant, obsessive mind of Louis Comfort Tiffany sought to permanently capture the fleeting, iridescent shimmer of a peacock's feather or the delicate, powdery wing of a morpho butterfly. He achieved this by subjecting the hot, glowing, newly blown glass vessel to an atmosphere of pure chemical chaos. While the glass was still radiating a fierce orange heat, it was carefully placed into a specialized fuming chamber. Here, atomized metallic salts, stannous chloride, iron and liquid gold, were sprayed directly onto the hot, soft skin of the glass. The metals instantly vaporized and permanently bonded to the silica, creating an impossibly thin, microscopic metallic film. Because this film is only molecules thick, it bends and refracts the ambient room light, splitting it into a mesmerizing, shifting puddle of oily purples, rich golden greens, and deep, mysterious blues. It is a glass that does not simply hold a single color, but constantly, endlessly performs a quiet, shimmering dance with the light around it. While the shimmering metallic surface of the vessel catches the light, we drift backward in time to witness how a single human breath was once stretched to an unimaginable, colossal scale to let the daylight into our homes, before the perfectly flat liquid silver lakes of the float glass process were ever conceived. Massive panes of window glass had to be wrestled directly from the air. In the vast, sweltering, cavernous glass houses of the 19th century, artisans known as gaffers stood elevated on heavy wooden platforms, positioned directly over deep, dark, empty trenches cut into the stone floor. Gathering an enormous, impossibly heavy, glowing mass of molten glass on a thick steel pipe, they would use the entire swinging weight of their bodies. They blew with staggering force while swinging the heavy glowing mass back and forth like a giant liquid pendulum deep into the trench. Gravity and breath stretched the glass into a monumental hollow glowing cylinder, sometimes reaching 10 feet in length. Once cooled, the ends of this massive glass log were cleanly cut off, and the cylinder was sliced straight down its long belly. Placed into a specialized, warm, flattening oven, the glass quietly unfolded, opening up like the pages of a heavy book, settling into a large, flat, rectangular pane. An epic, exhausting struggle against gravity, frozen perfectly into a clear, silent window. Letting go of all this heavy internal effort, feeling the warm, flattening heat wash over you, releasing the invisible tension stored in your shoulders, in your jaw, allowing yourself to simply unfold, resting perfectly still in the dark. This quiet, restful unwinding of tension finds its exact, deliberate inverse in a modern glass designed strictly to hold an immense, invisible, powerful stress permanently locked within its walls. When you look through the heavy side window of a moving car, you're looking through a material at war with itself. This is tempered safety glass. After a standard piece of glass is cut to its exact final shape, it is fed into a roaring furnace until it reaches a soft, glowing, pliable state. Then, it is suddenly, violently blasted on all sides with a roaring tempest of freezing, high-pressure air. The exterior surfaces of the glass instantly contract and harden, freezing in place, while the deep internal core remains hot and expanded. As the core finally, slowly cools, it desperately tries to shrink, constantly, violently pulling inward against the already frozen outer layers. This creates an unimaginable permanent state of severe internal compression. The glass becomes incredibly, unbelievably strong, easily deflecting heavy, sudden impacts. But if the outer, compressed skin is ever pierced, the entire hidden network of tension is instantly released. In a fraction of a second, the glass does not shatter into deadly jagged shards. It explosively crumbles, relaxing instantly into thousands of small, harmless, dull cubic pebbles. A beautiful, sudden release of a lifetime of held breath. The sudden, harmless shattering of that tension leaves behind a clear, empty space. A perfect void ready to be filled by the intricate logical maze of pure discovery. Hidden away in the bright clinical basements of major research universities, there exists a highly specialized, intensely focused breed of artisan, the scientific glass blower. They do not craft heavy, decorative vases or fragile painted ornaments. Their sole, dedicated medium is borosilicate glass tubing, and their canvas is the very architecture of chemistry itself. Working closely with brilliant, frantic scientists, they use intensely hot, sharply focused torches to bend, fuse, and permanently weld clear glass tubes into bewildering, complex three-dimensional labyrinths. They create custom distillation columns, intricate cooling coils trapped inside other coils, and perfect sealed vacuum chambers designed to capture isolated molecules. They must work with absolute, uncompromising millimeter perfection, ensuring every single joint is entirely seamless, perfectly smooth, and completely devoid of any microscopic flaws where dangerous reactive chemicals could hide. They are the silent, unseen architects of scientific progress, bending light, fire, and sand into the flawlessly clear, functional arteries through which the blood of modern human understanding continuously flows, fading slowly back into the heavy, peaceful, unyielding dark. The heavy, peaceful, unyielding dark of that laboratory silence finds its exact, ancient twin in the lightless caverns deep within the mountains of the Czech Republic. Here, the air is thick with the scent of wet stone and the slow, rhythmic dripping of minerals, and it is within this absolute stillness that the legend of Bohemian crystal was born. For centuries, artisans in these hidden valleys sought to create a glass that was not just clear, but possessed a profound, heavy brilliance that rivaled the finest diamonds. By introducing high concentrations of potash and calcium into the molten mix, they forged a material of incredible crystalline hardness. This was not glass meant to be merely blown into thin, fragile bubbles. It was glass meant to be deeply, aggressively carved. Using heavy, spinning wheels of stone and copper, the cutters would press the cold crystal against the grinding surface, carving deep, prismatic wedges and intricate, intersecting facets into the thick walls of the vessel. Each cut acts as a tiny, perfect mirror, catching the light and breaking it into a million dancing, spectral rainbows, a shimmering, frozen fire that survives even in the dimmest of rooms. The shimmering, prismatic fire of the cut crystal leads our inward eye to a place where the light is not broken, but perfectly, flawlessly channeled. Imagine a dense, heavy block of the purest optical glass, entirely devoid of any bubbles or microscopic seeds. Within the heart of this solid block, a high-powered laser beam is focused with staggering microscopic precision. Where the beam meets the interior of the glass, it creates a tiny, controlled explosion of heat, fracturing the silica at a single, isolated point. By moving the laser in a slow, calculated, three-dimensional dance, the artisan can print a ghostly, white, translucent image entirely suspended inside the solid glass. It is a subsurface laser engraving. You might see the intricate skeletal structure of a prehistoric bird or the complex, weaving nebula of a distant galaxy, appearing as a cloud of frozen smoke trapped forever in a clear, solid void. The surface of the glass remains perfectly smooth and untouched, while the image within floats in a state of eternal, weightless suspension, a dream captured in a bottle of solid light. And as this ghostly image floats in your mind, your own body feels equally light, equally weightless, as if the heavy bed beneath you has simply turned to a soft, supportive cloud, drifting in the silent dark. While the laser-etched stars drift in their clear solid heaven, we descend back to the sun-baked ancient sands where the first secrets of chemistry were whispered to the wind. For millennia, the clear purity of glass was an accident, an elusive goal. Most ancient glass carried a natural muddy tint of pale green or dull amber, caused by the microscopic iron impurities found in almost every grain of desert sand. To banish this green ghost, the ancient glassmakers discovered a literal glassmaker's soap. They introduced a measured amount of manganese dioxide into the molten crucible. In a moment of beautiful chemical irony, the manganese provides a subtle violet hue that perfectly cancels out the iron's green, creating a visual neutrality that allows the glass to appear as clear and colourless as a block of frozen mountain water. This was the birth of the Cristallo of Venice, a glass so transparent it was once believed to be made of pure solidified moonlight, allowing the eye to pass straight through its walls without the slightest hesitation. The transparent liquid purity of that ancient moonlight leads us to a material that is not glass at all, yet shares its very soul. Deep in the heart of the great forests, when a prehistoric pine tree would weep its thick, golden, fragrant resin, that liquid would sometimes capture a tiny struggling insect or a delicate fallen leaf. Over millions of years, as the tree died and was buried under mountains of cold, heavy earth, the resin underwent a profound molecular transformation. Under immense pressure and the slow glacial march of time, it polymerized, hardening into amber. It is a biological glass, a warm, golden, translucent window into a world that existed long before the first human breath ever touched a blowpipe. To hold a piece of polished amber is to hold a fragment of deep time. It is lightweight, warm to the touch, and carries within it a perfectly preserved, three-dimensional photograph of a prehistoric afternoon, frozen forever in a glowing golden honey. Sensing the ancient warmth of the amber, you feel a deep, ancestral peace wash over you. The long, slow history of the earth cradling you in its vast, patient arms. Your breathing is slow, your heart is quiet. This glowing, golden honey, frozen in time, finds its modern, high-tech counterpart in a material designed to withstand the very fires of the sun. In the roaring, futuristic kilns of the 20th century, scientists created glass ceramics, a hybrid material that possesses the transparency of glass, but the incredible, unyielding heat resistance of a ceramic tile. By carefully controlling the cooling process and introducing specific nucleating agents, they cause millions of tiny microscopic crystals to grow within the amorphous, glassy structure. This prevents the material from expanding or contracting when the temperature shifts violently. It is the material that forms the smooth, black, inductive cooktops in modern kitchens and the massive, heavy mirrors of the world's largest telescopes. It can be heated until it glows a fierce orange red and then plunged directly into a bucket of ice water without a single microscopic crack forming. It is a material that has mastered the shock of existence, remaining perfectly calm and perfectly whole amidst the most violent thermal storms. The calm, unshakable strength of the ceramic glass mirrors, the profound, protective silence of a material designed to guard the most dangerous secrets of human industry. When the work of nuclear reactors is done, it leaves behind a heavy, radioactive waste that must be kept away from the living world for tens of thousands of years. The solution is vitrification. The waste is mixed with crushed glass-forming minerals and melted into a thick, glowing molten sludge. When this sludge is poured into massive, thick-walled stainless steel canisters and allowed to cool, it hardens into a solid, black, glass-like block. The radioactive atoms are not just stored, they are chemically locked into the very molecular structure of the glass itself. Because glass is so incredibly stable and resistant to the slow, eroding touch of water and time, it becomes an eternal sarcophagus. In the deepest, darkest, most remote underground vaults, these heavy glass monoliths sit in absolute radiation-proof silence, guarding the future from the ghosts of the past for 100 centuries. Echoing this heavy protective silence is a glass that exists not to block radiation, but to completely erase the very existence of sound. In the busy, noisy heart of the modern world, the double-glazed window acts as a profound, transparent shield. Two separate panes of thick glass are held in a rigid frame, separated by a thin, hermetically sealed gap of a few millimeters. This gap is not filled with air, but with a heavy, sluggish, invisible noble gas like argon or krypton. Because sound is merely a vibration travelling through a medium, it struggles to pass through this layered barrier. The first pane catches the vibration of the outside world, but the heavy, gas-filled gap refuses to carry it to the second pane. The result is a miracle of modern architecture, a wall that lets in all the vibrant light of the day while completely, perfectly muting the roar of the traffic and the shouting of the wind, creating a silent, sun-drenched sanctuary where the only sound is the steady, peaceful rhythm of your own breath. Sinking deeper into this sanctuary, hearing the silence grow louder and more comforting, your body feels heavy, your mind feels clear, drifting into the soft velvet folds of the night. The silent, gas-filled gap of the modern window leads us back to a far more delicate, artistic use of the void, the technique of lamp working. Unlike the massive, roaring furnace of the glass house, the lamp worker sits at a quiet wooden bench, working over a small, intensely hot, focused blue flame. They use rods of coloured glass, no thicker than a pencil, and hollow tubes that look like delicate straws. As the glass enters the flame, it doesn't melt all at once. It softens locally, becoming a small, glowing, moving point of light. With tiny blackened tweezers and a steady rhythmic rotation, the artist can sculpt with the precision of a jeweler. They can create a tiny, perfect, anatomically correct human heart, a miniature forest of glass cacti, or a complex spinning carousel that fits in the palm of your hand. It is an intimate, quiet dance of fire and fingertip, where the glass responds to the slightest, most subtle movement, allowing the artist to weave intricate, three-dimensional poems in the air, cooled by the gentle, natural breath of the room. The intimate, tiny sculptures of the lampworker naturally expand into the massive world-building power of the fibre-optic network. While we have spoken of the light-bearing threads that cross the oceans, we must consider the glass itself, the cladding. A single fibre-optic strand is actually two different types of glass, one inside the other. The core is made of the purest, most transparent silica, but it is wrapped in an outer layer of glass with a slightly different refractive index. This creates a permanent internal mirror. When a pulse of light enters the core, it hits the boundary between the two glasses and is perfectly, totally reflected back inward. It cannot escape. It is a light that is trapped by its own clarity, forced to follow the curves and bends of the glass thread for thousands of miles. This is the phenomenon of total internal reflection, a law of physics that allows us to harness light as a tame, obedient servant, carrying the infinite digital memory of the entire human race through a microscopic glass corridor thinner than the hair on your head. The infinite digital memory of those light-bearing threads eventually finds its way to a final, resting state, the humble, discarded shard of cullet. In the world of glass blowing, nothing is ever truly lost. When a vessel shatters or the moil, the excess glass left on the blowpipe is cracked off. It is gathered into heavy wooden crates. This broken, recycled glass is called cullet. Adding cullet to a new batch of raw sand and soda ash acts as a catalyst. The broken glass melts at a much lower temperature than the raw minerals, helping the entire furnace reach a liquid state more efficiently and with less energy. Every single piece of glass you have ever touched carries within it the microscopic chemical ghosts of 1,000 previous incarnations. It is a material of perfect, eternal recycling, a substance that can be melted, shaped, broken and melted again, over and over, through the long turning centuries. It never tires, it never decays, and it never loses its fundamental crystalline soul. It is a material that understands the beauty of starting over, of returning to the fire to be born again into a new, beautiful and perfectly silent form. As you too prepare to start again, in the quiet, restorative fire of your deepest dreams, fading away now, drifting into the long, dark and perfect sleep. The long, dark and perfect sleep into which you are drifting is much like the eternal velvet silence of a deep-sea canyon, where time itself seems to hold its breath. This profound stillness is captured in the heart of a material that was once a royal secret, guarded by the threat of death on the islands of the Venetian lagoon. We call it milk glass, or opal glass, a substance that defies the very nature of transparency. To create this ghostly, translucent white, the glassmaker introduces tiny particles of bone ash, tin, or arsenic into the molten crucible. These microscopic crystals act like a billion tiny internal mirrors, scattering the light before it can pass through. The result is a glass that looks like a cloud of frozen steam, or a heavy, solid block of pale moonlight. As the artist shapes this opaque honey, the light doesn't pierce it. It lingers on the surface, casting soft, blurry shadows that feel as gentle as a whisper against your cheek. It is a material that keeps its own counsel, a white, silent vault that hides whatever it contains behind a wall of pure, milky calm. The texture of this milky, silent vault leads us to a strange and beautiful phenomenon born of the deepest, most ancient parts of the Earth's crust. While we think of glass as a human invention, the planet has been weaving its own glassy tapestries for eons in the form of obsidian's more delicate, mysterious sibling, pearlite. This is a volcanic glass that has been touched by the slow, persistent memory of water. Over millions of years, the solid, obsidian-like rock absorbs microscopic amounts of moisture from the damp earth, becoming hydrated. When this glass is suddenly and violently heated, the trapped water expands into steam, causing the glass to pop and swell like a kernel of corn, turning it into a lightweight, frothy, white foam. It is a stone that has learned how to breathe, a rigid glass that has expanded into a soft, airy sponge. It reminds us that even the most solid and unyielding materials harbour a secret capacity for change, a hidden lightness that only needs the right touch of warmth to be revealed. And as this hidden lightness is revealed within you, you feel your own heavy thoughts expanding, turning into a soft, airy mist, floating effortlessly above the weight of the world. Echoing this airy, volcanic expansion is the breathtaking, human-made miracle of aerogel, often called frozen smoke. This is the lightest solid material in existence, a substance that is 99% air and 1% glass. Scientists create it by removing the liquid from a silica gel and replacing it with gas, leaving behind the gossamer-thin skeletal remains of the glass molecules. To look at a block of aerogel is to look at a piece of the sky that has been caught and held in your hand. It has a pale, ethereal, bluish tint, much like the sky at the very first light of dawn. It is so light that it can rest on a flower petal without bending it, yet it is so powerful an insulator that it can protect a delicate rose from the direct, searing flame of a blowtorch. It is a paradox of physics, a material that is almost entirely nothing, yet possesses an incredible unyielding strength. It is the perfect embodiment of a dream, a structure made of almost nothing that can nonetheless change everything it touches. While the frozen smoke of the aerogel drifts in the mind, we return to the searing orange heart of the furnace to witness a dance of colour that is as ancient as the stars. In the late hours of the night, when the glass house is quiet and the air is heavy with the smell of burning wood, a gaffer might reach for a small blackened iron box. Inside is a collection of silver stains, chemical compounds that do not sit on top of the glass, but actually sink into it. When these silver salts are applied to the surface of a clear sheet of glass and fired in the kiln, the silver ions migrate into the molecular structure of the silica, turning the glass a deep, rich, luminous yellow. This is the origin of the term stained glass. It is not a paint, but a permanent chemical transformation. The yellow doesn't block the light, it filters it, turning every sunbeam into a warm golden pool of liquid honey that spills across the floor, warming the cold stone and painting the air with a sense of ancient, holy sunlight. Feeling this golden sunlight warming your mind, you find yourself drifting into a state of absolute glowing peace, the shadows of the day melting away in the warmth of the kiln. The transformative power of those silver ions leads us to a specialized modern glass that responds to the light like a living, breathing eye. This is photochromic glass, the material found in lenses that darken automatically when you step out into the brilliant glare of the sun. Embedded within the clear glass are millions of microscopic crystals of silver halide. When the invisible ultraviolet light of the sun strikes the glass, it triggers a chemical reaction, causing the silver to clump together and block the light, turning the glass a dark, protective grey. When you return to the shadows, the reaction reverses and the glass clears once more. It is a glass with a memory, a material that is constantly sensing and responding to its environment. It reminds us that we are always in a state of flux, always adjusting and shifting to the world around each other, and that there is a quiet internal mechanism that protects us, keeping the light at the perfect, most comfortable level for our rest. This quiet internal adjustment leads us back to the grand, echoing halls of the Renaissance, where the quest for absolute diamond-like clarity led to the invention of lead crystal. By introducing large amounts of lead oxide into the molten batch, English glassmakers created a material that was significantly heavier and softer than traditional glass. This extra weight gave the glass a high refractive index, meaning it could bend light with a ferocity and brilliance that had never been seen before. When a lead crystal chandelier is lit by 100 candles, it doesn't just hold the light, it shatters it into 1,000 dancing, spectral jewels that leap across the walls. But the softness of the lead glass also allowed for deeper, more intricate cutting. The artisans could carve deep, sharp-edged patterns that acted as complex prisms, turning a simple bowl into a fountain of refracted light. It is a material that proves that sometimes adding a little weight and a little softness can create the most brilliant and beautiful results of all. And as you embrace your own softness and weight, you feel a brilliant, quiet joy radiating from within, a slow, rhythmic pulsing of light that follows the pace of your breath. While the lead crystal shatters the candlelight into rainbows, we drift to a more subtle, mysterious interaction between glass and the unseen forces of the earth. In the world of high-end optics, there exists a rare and precious material called fluorite glass. Unlike standard glass made from sand, this is made from the mineral calcium fluoride. It possesses a quality called low dispersion, which means it treats all colours of light with equal respect, refusing to let the different wavelengths separate as they pass through the lens. In a world where light is constantly trying to break apart, fluorite glass keeps it whole. It creates images of such staggering crystalline purity that they seem more real than the world itself. It is a reminder of the beauty of wholeness, of a material that refuses to let the different parts of the light be scattered, holding everything together in a single, focused, and perfect point of truth. This focused point of truth leads us down into the dark, hidden foundations of the world's most sensitive scientific experiments. In the deep, underground chambers of particle physics laboratories, there are massive, spherical glass vessels known as photomultiplier tubes. These are not blown for beauty, but for a level of sensitivity that is almost divine. The interior of the glass bulb is coated with a microscopic layer of photosensitive material. When a single solitary photon, the smallest possible unit of light, strikes the glass, the tube triggers an electrical avalanche, amplifying that tiny spark into a signal that a computer can read. These glass eyes sit in total, absolute darkness, waiting for years for a single flash of light from a passing neutrino. They are the ultimate observers, the silent guardians of the invisible world, proving that even in the deepest, most profound dark, there is always the potential for a single, brilliant moment of discovery. Waiting in the dark for that single spark, you feel a profound sense of patience and calm. The quiet waiting is not empty, but full of potential, drifting deeper into the dark. The silent underground eyes of the physicist lead our gaze back to the surface of the water, to a material that bridges the gap between the solid and the liquid, the glass transition. We have spoken of how glass cools, but we must consider the incredible slow-motion physics of stress relief. Even after the glass has left the annealer, it continues to settle on a molecular level for decades. In the finest, most expensive telescope mirrors, this settling can cause the surface to shift by a few millionths of an inch, enough to blur the stars. To prevent this, these massive glass discs are often made of a material called ULE, or ultra-low expansion glass. It is a titanium silica glass that has been engineered to have a thermal expansion coefficient of 0. No matter how the temperature shifts, no matter how the seasons change, the glass refuses to move. It is the ultimate expression of stability, a material that has found its final perfect form and refuses to ever let it go. This unshakable stillness eventually finds its final, poetic expression in the humble, weathered beauty of desert glass. In the vast, silent stretches of the Libyan desert, travellers sometimes find fragments of a beautiful, translucent yellow-green glass scattered among the dunes. This is not the work of lightning, but of a cosmic visitor from nearly 30 million years ago. A massive comet or asteroid exploded in the atmosphere just above the desert, unleashing a wave of heat so intense it melted the surface of the Sahara into a lake of liquid emerald. As the heat dissipated, the desert floor hardened into a vast, jagged sea of glass. Over the millions of years since, the relentless blowing sands have polished these fragments into smooth, soft, aerodynamic shapes. They are pieces of a day when the sky itself turned to fire, now resting quietly in the cool, shifting sands, holding the memory of a cosmic collision in a form that is as gentle and soft as a worry stone. They are the final evidence of the cycle, from fire to liquid to solid to the slow, patient polishing of time, as you too are polished by the gentle, rhythmic passing of the night, drifting now into the deep, into the quiet, into the light. The light of the Libyan desert glass, born of celestial fire and polished by the soft, endless hands of the wind, eventually settles into the palm of an ancient traveller as the smallest, most precious unit of human connection. Imagine a single, tiny, perforated sphere of glass, no larger than a grain of salt, yet carrying a vibrant, deep cobalt blue that seems to hold the entire ocean within its walls. These are glass beads, the seeds of global history. Long before the invention of paper currency, these tiny, fire-polished jewels were the language of trade, travelling thousands of miles along the Silk Roads and across the vast, rolling waves of the Mediterranean. They were not merely ornaments, they were a form of portable sunlight, a way to carry the brilliance of the furnace in a pocket or a pouch. Each one was painstakingly created by drawing a long, hollow tube of molten glass and snapping it into microscopic sections, which were then tumbled in hot sand to smooth their sharp edges into perfect, comfortable rounds. They represent a monumental shift in human thought, the moment we learn to take the immense, roaring power of the forge and shrink it down into a delicate, wearable whisper that could connect cultures across the silent, stretching miles. The texture of these tiny travelling seeds leads us into a world of dizzying, microscopic complexity, where a single glass rod contains an entire hidden gallery of art. Imagine a thick, heavy cane of glass that, when viewed from the end, reveals a perfect, intricate mosaic of 1,000 different colours, a miniature star, a blooming rose, or a geometric kaleidoscope. This is the art of mirroring. To create this, the artisan layers different colours of molten glass around a central core, building up a massive thick log of pattern. While it's still searingly hot, it is stretched and pulled until it is as thin as a thread. Yet miraculously, the intricate image inside never distorts. It only shrinks, becoming a microscopic masterpiece. When these threads are sliced into tiny flat cross-sections and fused together into a larger vessel, they create a surface that looks like a carpet of frozen flowers or a galaxy of shattered stars. It is a technique that demands a profound meditative patience, requiring the artist to see the infinite within the infinitesimal, building a world layer by layer until the glass itself becomes a vibrant, breathing tapestry of colour and light. And as you visualise these microscopic flowers blooming in the dark, your own breath becomes a soft rhythmic tide, pulling you deeper into the velvet warmth of the night. You are safe, you are still, and the world is growing quiet around you. Echoing this incredible detailed precision is a form of glasswork that gazes back at the world with a haunting, lifelike soul. In the quiet, brightly lit studios of the ocularist, the ancient art of the glassblower meets the delicate touch of the master painter. A glass eye is not a simple cold sphere. It is a hollow, thin shell of specialized cryolite glass, chosen for its milky, bone-like opacity. The artisan uses a tiny hissing torch to melt thin rods of colored glass, delicately painting the intricate radiating lines of the iris and the deep, fathomless void of the pupil onto the white surface. They use threads of glass as thin as a spider's silk to replicate the microscopic branching veins that give the eye its living warmth. When the final clear layer of crystal is fused over the top, it creates a deep, liquid lens that captures the ambient light, giving the object a startling, sentient presence. It is a profound act of empathy, using the cold, hard medium of melted sand to restore a sense of wholeness to a human face, creating a window that, while it cannot see, allows the world to look back with a sense of quiet, restored dignity. While the glass eye holds its steady, unblinking gaze, we turn our attention upward to the massive silvered mirrors that reach out to touch the very edges of the observable universe. To create a telescope mirror large enough to see the first light of creation, scientists must perform a monumental mechanical dance called spin casting. Imagine a massive circular furnace, the size of a small house, filled with 20 tons of the purest, clearest borosilicate glass. As the furnace is heated to a roaring orange-white brilliance, the entire structure begins to rotate, slowly and steadily. Because the liquid glass is spinning, gravity pulls it into a perfect, natural parabolic curve, the exact shape needed to focus the light of distant stars. The furnace must continue to spin for weeks as the glass slowly, agonizingly cools, ensuring that this perfect liquid curve is permanently locked into a solid, unyielding form. It is a collaboration between human engineering and the fundamental forces of the universe, a way to let the rotation of the Earth itself shape the very lens we use to understand our place among the galaxies. The monumental spinning curve of the telescope mirror leads us back to the gentle horizontal planes of the Earth, to a beauty born not from fire, but from the slow, patient decay of time itself. When ancient Roman glass vessels were buried in the damp, mineral-rich soil for 2,000 years, they underwent a beautiful chemical transformation. The moisture in the earth slowly leached the alkali from the glass, creating thousands of microscopic, paper-thin layers on the surface. When light strikes these ancient, weathered layers, it bounces back and forth between them, creating a breathtaking, shimmering iridescence that was never intended by the original maker. This is the patina of time. A simple utilitarian jug is transformed into a shimmering rainbow-coloured jewel, glowing with the ghost of every sunset it has witnessed while resting in the dark earth. It is a reminder that even in the process of breaking down, there is a profound, unfolding beauty, a soft, glowing evidence that the passage of time can add a layer of grace that no furnace could ever replicate. And as this ancient, shimmering grace settles over you, you feel the years and the hours falling away, leaving only the peaceful, iridescent present. Your body is heavy, your mind is light, and you are drifting deeper and deeper. While the ancient glass glows with the memory of the soil, we find a different kind of strength in a material where glass is not a vessel, but a powerful woven textile. Imagine glass that has been pulled so thin it can be spun into a thread, woven into a fabric and saturated with resin to create a substance stronger than steel. This is fiberglass. It is a material that challenges our very definition of glass as a fragile, breakable thing. In this form, the glass becomes a flexible, unyielding skeleton, a structural ghost that allows us to build light, soaring boats that dance over the waves, and massive, silent blades for wind turbines that reach up to catch the breath of the storm. It is a marriage of the ethereal and the industrial, proving that when glass is divided into a million tiny cooperating threads, it gains a collective resilience that can withstand the most violent forces of nature. It is a testament to the power of connection, showing us that even the most delicate material can become unbreakable when it is woven into a unified, purposeful whole. The woven strength of the fiberglass threads leads us back to a moment of singular, royal mastery in the ancient world, the creation of the Portland vase. This is perhaps the most famous piece of cameo glass in human history, a dark, midnight blue amphora entirely encased in a thick, snowy white outer skin. To create it, a Roman master had to perform a feat of subtractive genius that still defies modern replication. Using nothing but tiny, handheld stone tools and a lifetime of focused stillness, the artist carved through the white layer to reveal the dark blue beneath, sculpting figures of such incredible, three-dimensional detail that they seemed to breathe within the glass. The white glass was shaved down until it was as thin as a moth's wing, allowing the dark blue to create soft purple shadows in the musculature of the figures. It is a masterpiece of light and shadow, a silent, rotating drama where the glass is used to create a sense of depth and narrative that has survived for 2 millennia, a permanent cooling testament to the heights that can be reached when the human spirit is focused through the lens of a single, unwavering purpose. The subtractive, detailed carving of the Portland vase finds its modern, liquid counterpart in the eerie, frosted beauty of acid etching. To create a surface that is soft to the touch and perfectly diffuses the light, the glass is not carved with a wheel, but breathed upon by a powerful biting acid. The areas of the glass that are to remain clear are protected with a thick, heavy wax, and then the entire vessel is submerged in a bath of hydrofluoric acid. The acid eats away at the unprotected surface, creating millions of microscopic pits that scatter the light in every direction. When the wax is removed, the result is a breathtaking contrast between the sharp, icy clarity of the polished glass and the soft, velvety, ghostly mist of the etched areas. It is a process of finding beauty through controlled vulnerability, of allowing the glass to be softened and changed by a harsh element to create a surface that is as gentle as a frosted window on a winter morning, holding the light in a soft, protective embrace. Embracing this soft, frosted light, you feel the sharp edges of your day dissolving, turning into a gentle, glowing mist that wraps around you. You are sinking, drifting into the quiet, into the soft. The misty, etched surface of the glass hides a secret world of internal pressure that can only be revealed when the light is viewed through a specialized filter. If you take a piece of tempered glass and look at it through a polarizing lens, the invisible, warring forces within the material suddenly erupt into a vibrant, swirling pattern of cross-hatched shadows and rainbow-colored bands. This is birefringence. It is the physical manifestation of stress made visible. The light is literally bent and twisted as it passes through the areas of intense compression and tension, creating a topographical map of the internal struggle that gives the glass its strength. It is a profound visual reminder that there is often a hidden complexity beneath a calm, transparent surface, a beautiful, orderly structure of pressure and release that holds everything together. In the dark, this secret, colourful map reminds us that our own internal stresses are part of our strength, a balanced network of forces that allows us to remain whole and resilient against the weight of the world. The secret, vibrant patterns of birefringence eventually give way to the pure, resonant acoustics of hollow singing glass. We have spoken of the singing rim of the goblet, but we must consider the glass wind chime, a collection of thin, suspended glass rods that turn the movement of the air into a delicate, crystalline melody. When the wind moves through these hanging threads, they collide with a soft, high-pitched tink that echoes with a purity that metal or wood can never achieve. Because glass is so rigid and has such a uniform molecular structure, it vibrates at a very specific, high frequency that carries through the air with almost no distortion. The sound is not a thud or a clang, but a shimmering liquid sparkle that seems to hang in the air long after the glass has stopped moving. It is the voice of the furnace, translated into the language of the breeze, a final, peaceful resonance that fills the quiet spaces of the night, a soft musical bridge between the solid world of the earth and the invisible, flowing world of the air, as you too become a bridge between the day and the deep, melodic silence of your dreams, drifting now into the resonance, into the quiet, into the light. The resonance of the singing wind chime eventually settles into the deep, rhythmic hum of the reheating chamber, a sound that feels like the very breath of a sleeping giant, steady and warm. This transition from the ethereal vibration of the air to the physical, grounded heat of the studio leads us to the silent, dark companion of the glass blower, the graphite paddle. While the furnace is a world of blinding light, the paddle is a piece of absolute midnight black shadow. Carved from dense, high-purity carbon, this tool remains incredibly cool and unyielding, even as it is pressed directly against the glowing, molten skin of the gather. There is a profound, mesmerizing contrast as the brilliant orange glass glides over the matte black surface. Because the graphite is so smooth and naturally lubricating, the glass doesn't stick. It simply skates, allowing the artist to flatten a curve or straighten a line with a gentle dragging motion. The sound is a low, dry whisper, the sound of the Earth's ancient carbon providing a steady, unmoving boundary for the wild liquid fire. While the graphite stays cold and dry, a different kind of boundary is found in the soft, wet embrace of the cherrywood block. Imagine a thick, heavy sphere of fruitwood, hollowed out into a perfect smooth cup and kept submerged in a bucket of cold, clear water until it is saturated to its very core. When the glowing liquid glass is cradled within this wet wooden mould, it doesn't actually touch the wood itself. Instead, the intense heat instantly vaporizes the water, creating a thin, invisible, high-pressure jacket of steam. The glass floats on this cushion of white mist, spinning effortlessly, becoming a perfect symmetrical sphere without ever feeling the friction of a solid surface. The studio fills with a sudden, sweet, aromatic scent of toasted cherrywood and rising steam, a humid, earthy fragrance that wraps around the artist like a protective veil. It is a moment of elemental balance, where the fire of the glass is held in a peaceful, suspended animation by the water and the wood, spinning and smoothing itself into a state of quiet, spherical perfection. And as this sphere spins in your mind, your own thoughts begin to rotate with it, a slow, steady, effortless turning. You feel the cool mist of the steam on your skin, softening the edges of the day. You are sinking deeper into the warmth. This cradle of water and wood leads us naturally to the gaffer's throne, the glassblower's bench. This is a heavy, rugged piece of furniture, often built from thick, weathered oak, with two long, level iron rails extending forward like the arms of an ancient chair. Here, the the artist sits in a posture of deep, focused meditation. The long steel blowpipe rests across the rails, and with a rhythmic back-and-forth movement of the hand, the artist keeps the glass in a state of constant hypnotic rotation. If the spinning ever stops, the liquid glass will immediately succumb to the heavy downward pull of gravity, drooping and losing its elegant form. This constant movement becomes a second heartbeat for the glassblower, a steady, oscillating dance that ensures the piece remains perfectly centered. The sound of the metal pipe rolling over the iron rails is a low metallic rumble, a grounding frequency that anchors the entire room in a sense of purposeful, rhythmic stillness. While the bench provides the stage, the most essential tool, the jacks, act as the artist's own elongated metal fingers. These are a pair of large, heavy carbon steel blades joined by a spring-like arch, resembling ancient shears but possessing a much more delicate purpose. To keep the blades from grabbing or scratching the hot glass, the artist frequently touches them to a block of golden, fragrant beeswax. As the metal meets the heat, the wax melts and smokes, filling the air with a rich, honeyed scent that is the signature perfume of the glass house. The artist uses the jacks to neck down the glass, pressing the blades into the spinning bubble to create the slender opening of a vase or the delicate stem of a wine glass. The metal glows a dull red as it absorbs the heat, but the glass remains submissive, yielding to the pressure as if it were soft taffy. It is a dialogue of friction and finesse, a moment where the rigid steel and the liquid light are joined in a single, focused point of creation. The delicate, smoky work of the jacks leads us to the sudden, decisive snap of the diamond shears. Unlike the long, sweeping blades used for necking, these shears have a distinct four-pointed opening designed to grip the liquid glass from all sides at once. When the artist needs to trim away a stray thread of molten silica or level the rim of a glowing bowl, they move with a speed that is almost too fast for the eye to follow. The shears bite into the hot glass, and for a fraction of a second, the material behaves like thick, heavy fabric. With a sharp, metallic snip, the excess glass falls away, landing in the cooling bucket with a sudden, echoing splash. The edge that remains is thick, rounded, and perfectly clean, already beginning to heal itself in the heat. It is a moment of profound, irreversible choice. The point where the wild, expanding bubble is given its final human boundary, trimmed and tailored with a confidence that only comes from years of standing before the fire. And as this boundary is set, you feel your own boundaries softening. The world outside the room is fading. The heavy choice of the day is over. You're simply resting, breathing, allowing the silence to take shape. Echoing the decisive cut of the shears is the heavy, flat weight of the battledore. The wooden paddle used to create a stable foundation for the glass. Imagine a thick, rectangular board of charred wood with a sturdy handle, used to press against the bottom of a spinning, glowing vessel. As the artist applies pressure, the rounded base of the glass is forced into a perfectly level, perfectly flat plane. This ensures that when the glass eventually cools and enters the world of gravity, it will stand tall and true on a table or a shelf. The charred wood leaves a fine, microscopic dusting of carbon on the hot surface, which is later polished away, leaving behind a clarity that is absolute. The battledore is the tool of stability, the instrument that gives the vessel its balance and its grace, reminding us that even the most ethereal, light-filled object must eventually find a way to stand firmly upon the earth. While the battledore works from the outside, the steam stick is a tool of internal, invisible expansion. It is a simple, humble rod of wet wood, often hand-carved to a point, that the artist presses into the small, open hole of a vessel while it is still attached to the pipe. As the wet wood enters the searing heat of the interior, it creates a sudden, miniature explosion of steam. Because the artist's hand blocks the exit, the pressure has nowhere to go but out, pushing against the soft glass walls and causing the base to swell outward in a perfect rounded dome. It is a beautiful physical paradox, using the power of water to shape the heart of the fire. The glass responds to the steam with a gentle, visible pulse, expanding as if it were drawing a deep, satisfied breath. It is a moment of hidden energy, where the invisible force of the mist dictates the final, elegant volume of the form. The texture of this internal expansion leads us to the rhythmic, geometric light of the optic mould. Imagine a heavy, cast-iron bucket with sharp, vertical ridges or deep, star-shaped patterns lining the interior walls. The glass blower takes a hot, thick gather of glass and plunges it deep into this metal heart. As they blow into the pipe, the glass is forced into the ridges, taking on a series of deep, vertical furrows. When the glass is withdrawn and further inflated, these ridges stretch and widen, creating a mesmerizing pattern of light and shadow that ripples across the surface like water in a sunlit pool. The mould doesn't just shape the glass, it prepares it to catch the light in a specific mathematical way, creating a series of internal lenses that bend the room's glow into a shimmering rhythmic dance. It is the marriage of industrial geometry and liquid grace, a way to weave a permanent structural rhythm into the very skin of the vessel. And as this rhythm ripples through your mind, you feel your pulse slowing to match it, a steady, gentle wave of relaxation washing over you. You are sinking, drifting into the patterns of the light. While the optic mould creates a permanent structural rhythm, the lip wrap is a delicate final trail of colour that defines the very edge of the world. Imagine the artist holding a long thin thread of molten coloured glass, perhaps a deep opaque black or a vibrant glowing turquoise, and slowly trailing it onto the spinning rim of a clear vase. The colour winds around the edge like a fine silk ribbon, fusing instantly and permanently to the transparent wall. This tiny addition of colour does something miraculous to the eye. It defines the boundary of the object, giving the transparent glass a clear, definitive beginning and end. It is a crowning touch, a final, elegant signature that frames the light within. The thin trail of colour follows the spin of the pipe with absolute precision, creating a perfect, unbroken circle that represents the completion of the work, a final, coloured breath before the piece is sent to its long, cooling rest. The final, elegant circle of the lip wrap eventually leads us back to the fundamental nature of the material itself, its infinite honey-like viscosity. We often speak of glass as a solid, but in the heat of the studio it is defined entirely by its working range. Some glass is long, meaning it remains soft and pliable for a long time as it cools, giving the artist minutes of peaceful, unhurried time to sculpt and shape. Other glass is short, setting up with a sudden icy snap that requires a frantic high-speed precision. The viscosity of the glass is its character, its personality, its soul. It is a liquid that is constantly, stubbornly trying to become a solid, a river that is always on the verge of freezing. As the artist works, they must constantly feel this shifting resistance, adjusting their touch to the changing thickness of the light. It is a profound, lifelong lesson in timing and patience, an understanding that everything has its moment of fluidity and its moment of stillness, and that the beauty of the work lies in knowing exactly when to let the flow become a permanent, peaceful silence, as you too let the flow of your thoughts settle into the quiet, unmoving depth of a perfect, dreamless rest, fading now into the glass, into the quiet, into the light. The final, elegant circle of the lip wrap, that thin, shimmering trail of defining colour, eventually settles into the profound silence of a shared intention, a wordless understanding that breathes life into the studio. While we often imagine the glass blower as a solitary figure standing against the flame, the creation of a truly complex piece is a deeply hypnotic, synchronized dance between 2 or even 3 souls, moving in a perfect, unspoken choreography. This is the art of the assistant, the shadow who moves in perfect harmony with the master gaffer. In the intense, roaring heat of the studio, where the air vibrates with energy, there is no room for the noise of spoken words. Instead, they communicate through the subtle language of the body, a slight nod of the head, a specific tilt of the blowpipe, or the rhythmic tapping of a metal tool against the stone floor. The assistant anticipates every need, gathering bits of molten colour exactly when the glass is at its most receptive, shielding the gaffer from the most intense radiation and maintaining the constant hypnotic rotation of the pipe. It is a shared consciousness, a folding of two wills into a single fluid motion, much like the way two separate waves in the ocean merge into one, larger, more powerful swell, moving with a grace that is both effortless and absolute. This seamless choreography of human movement finds its quiet, glowing sanctuary in a specialized secondary chamber known as the garage. Imagine a low, wide, rectangular oven kept at a constant, steady, cherry-red heat just below the temperature where glass begins to flow. This is the waiting room for the various components of a complex sculpture: the preheated handles, the delicate decorative wraps, or the intricate multicolored murrine canes. Here, the glass pieces rest on a bed of soft white ceramic fiber, held in a state of warm, vibrating readiness. They are not yet part of the whole, but they are already breathing the same heat. The garage acts as a temporal bridge, holding these individual fragments in a suspended twilight so that when the gaffer is ready, they can be fused instantly and seamlessly to the main body of the work. It is a place of preparation and patience, a glowing repository of potential that ensures every part of the final form is born from the same fire, sharing the same thermal history and the same quiet internal peace. And as this sense of preparation settles into your mind, you feel your own breath becoming a rhythmic, supportive companion. A quiet internal assistant that knows exactly what you need to let go, sinking deeper into the warmth. The texture of this warm auxiliary waiting room leads us far away from the heavy pull of the Earth into the weightless, silent void of high orbital space. In the zero-gravity environment of a space station, the very nature of glass blowing undergoes a staggering, beautiful transformation. On Earth, the glass blower must fight constantly against gravity, spinning the pipe to prevent the molten gather from sagging and dripping. But in the quiet, weightless dark, a sphere of liquid glass becomes a perfect self-sustaining world. Without the downward pull, surface tension becomes the supreme architect, drawing the molten silica into a mathematically perfect sphere that floats freely in the air. The internal air pressure from the blowpipe expands the bubble with a terrifyingly beautiful symmetry, creating walls of such uniform, gossamer thinness that they would be impossible to achieve on the planet's surface. It is a glass born of pure geometry, a crystalline bubble that has never known the burden of its own weight, a light-filled vessel that exists in a state of eternal, weightless suspension, mirroring the perfect, silent orbits of the stars themselves. While the zero-gravity sphere achieves its perfection through absence, the tactile, velvety surface of sand-blasted glass is born through a violent, rhythmic collision. Imagine a finished, polished vessel, brilliant and reflective, being placed into a dark, enclosed chamber. A high-pressure stream of air, carrying thousands of tiny, jagged grains of abrasive grit or fine sand, is directed against the smooth, transparent skin. The sound is a steady, oceanic roar, a mechanical storm that systematically pits and scars the surface. But out of this microscopic destruction comes a new, profound beauty. The sharp, glaring reflections are stripped away, replaced by a soft, matte, semi-translucent texture that feels like heavy silk or the skin of a ripened peach. The glass no longer shouts the light back at the room. It drinks it in, diffusing it into a soft internal glow that seems to emanate from the very heart of the material. It is a process of softening through struggle, of finding a quiet, understated elegance by surrendering the surface to the relentless, scouring breath of the wind, surrendering the surface of your own thoughts, feeling the sharp edges of the day being softly, rhythmically smoothed away, leaving only a soft internal glow, a peaceful, diffused light that fills the quiet spaces of your mind. Echoing this soft, diffused glow is a surface that does not scatter the light, but rather turns it into a shimmering, oily, iridescent dream. This is the art of the luster, a technique where the glass is treated not with sand, but with the invisible, vaporized ghosts of precious metals. While the vessel is still radiating a deep internal warmth, it is sprayed with a fine mist of metallic salts, bismuth, silver, or copper, dissolved in a delicate organic oil. In the intense heat of the kiln, the oil vanishes into a thin white smoke, leaving behind a microscopic metallic film that is only a few molecules thick. This film interferes with the incoming light, splitting it into a dancing, rainbow-coloured display that looks like oil on water, or the shimmering interior of a seashell. It is a glass that seems to move even when it is perfectly still, a surface that constantly shifts its hue as the viewer breathes, turning a solid object into a fluid, ever-changing puddle of light, a captured sunrise that never reaches the noon. The shifting, iridescent dream of the luster eventually finds its physical grounding in a specialized tool designed to shape the very foundation of the work, the foot folder. Imagine two flat, heavy boards of charred cherry wood joined together by a flexible, spring-like handle of dark steel. After a small, separate gather of molten glass is fused to the bottom of a vase, the artist uses the foot folder to clamp the glowing mass. As the pipe is rotated, the flat wooden boards press against the glass, folding the hot lip back upon itself to create a wide, sturdy, double-walled base. The smell of the wood charring in the heat is deep and comforting, like the scent of an old library or a winter fire. The foot folder is the tool of the transition, the instrument that takes the wild, liquid bubble and gives it the physical structure it needs to stand alone. It is a firm, wooden embrace that defines the footprint of the piece, ensuring that even the most delicate, light-filled form has a heavy, stable, and perfectly level centre of gravity. And as you find your own centre of gravity, you feel your body becoming heavy and stable, anchored to the soft support beneath you. Your breath is a slow, steady pulse, the footprint of your rest. The charred, woody smell of the foot folder eventually fades into the cool, sharp, rhythmic splash of water against a spinning diamond wheel. This is the realm of cold working, where the glass has finished its journey through the fire and must now be refined through the patient, progressive application of grit. The artisan begins with a heavy, rotating wheel covered in coarse industrial diamonds, a 60 grit surface that grinds away the rough pontil mark with a harsh, scratching roar. But as the work progresses, the wheels become finer and finer, shifting from the coarse grit to a soft, silky 400, then 1000, and finally to a wheel of pure white felt charged with cerium oxide. With each step, the sound of the work changes, moving from a roar to a hum, and finally to a high-pitched singing whistle. The frosted, scarred surface of the glass slowly, miraculously begins to clear, revealing the transparent depth beneath. It is a meditative, repetitive ritual of returning the light to the glass, a slow, watery peeling away of the layers until the surface becomes a perfect, unblemished mirror, reflecting the world with a clarity that is absolute. This absolute clarity reveals the true paradoxical nature of the material, its state as a frozen liquid. At the molecular level, glass is a landscape of beautiful, organized chaos, while a piece of metal or a crystal of salt has atoms that are locked into perfect, repeating geometric rows like soldiers on parade. The atoms in glass are a jumble of random, swirling connections, a frozen snapshot of a liquid in motion. Physics often describes this as a state of high entropy, a material that has the structural rigidity of a solid, but the randomized, wandering soul of a liquid. It is a substance that has avoided the cold, crystalline order of the earth, choosing instead to remain in a state of permanent, beautiful hesitation. It is this very randomness, this lack of internal boundaries, that allows the light to pass through so effortlessly, without ever being blocked by the walls of a crystal. The glass is clear precisely because its atoms are still wandering in the dark, caught forever in a state of magnificent, unorganized stillness, floating in this unorganized stillness. You feel your own thoughts wandering, drifting without a path, without the need for order. You're simply a part of the quiet jumble of the night, safe and entirely free. The wandering molecular chaos of the glass finds its historical anchor in the gilded exile of the island of Murano. In the year 1291, the Republic of Venice issued a decree that changed the history of the craft forever. All glassmakers were ordered to move their furnaces to a small, isolated island in the lagoon. Ostensibly, this was to protect the wooden buildings of the city from the constant threat of fire, but in reality, it was a move to protect the most valuable secrets in the world. The glassmakers of Murano became a specialized elite class, granted high status and the right to marry into nobility, but they were strictly forbidden from leaving the island upon pain of death. They were the keepers of the cristallo, the only people on Earth who knew how to make glass as clear as water. For centuries, the island was a hive of intense flickering light and whispered secrets, a floating fortress of fire where the most beautiful objects in the world were born in a state of high stakes, golden isolation. It is a reminder that beauty is often born in the quiet, protected spaces, far away from the noise and the prying eyes of the world. The gilded, isolated island eventually gives way to a process where the glass is not blown, but patiently, slowly grown in a cradle of cold plaster, the art of kiln casting. In this technique, the artist begins not with fire, but with a model made of soft, fragrant wax. This wax form is encased in a heavy, solid mould of plaster and silica, and then placed in a warm kiln where the wax is allowed to melt and run out, leaving behind a perfect empty void. This is the lost wax process. Into this dark, hollow chamber, cold chunks of coloured glass are carefully placed. As the kiln is heated over many days, the glass slowly softens and slumps, trickling down into every tiny, microscopic crevice of the mould. It is a slow, gravity-fed birth, a process that can take weeks of gradual heating and even longer weeks of careful, methodical cooling. When the plaster is finally chipped away, what emerges is a solid, heavy, monumental sculpture, a piece of glass that feels like a stone, holding the light in a deep internal reservoir that seems to have no bottom. It is a final, heavy testament to the power of patience, a material that has travelled through the long, dark silence of the kiln to emerge as a solid, unyielding fragment of a dream, held perfectly still, in the deep, in the quiet, in the light. The heavy, monumental stillness of the kiln-cast form, born from weeks of silent subterranean heat, gradually yields to a more gentle, surrendered movement, the soft, graceful act of slumping. Imagine a flat, cold sheet of window glass, perfectly clear and unmoving, laid carefully across the top of a curved ceramic mould, perhaps shaped like a shallow bowl or a gentle undulating wave. As the temperature in the kiln begins to rise, the glass does not melt into a puddle, nor does it resist the change. Instead, it reaches a state of profound, honey-like relaxation. Under the quiet, constant, and invisible weight of gravity, the solid sheet begins to sag. It drapes itself over the contours of the mould with the slow, effortless elegance of silk falling over a velvet chair. The edges soften, the corners round, and the glass simply accepts the shape of the form beneath it. It is a process of yielding, a beautiful demonstration of what happens when we stop resisting the forces around us and allow ourselves to be shaped by the warmth and the pull of the earth, a slow, rhythmic descent into a new, more comfortable configuration. The gentle, yielding sag of the slumped glass leads our thoughts to the invisible, molecular architecture that allows certain vessels to withstand the most violent shocks of heat. While ordinary glass expands and contracts with a restless energy when the temperature shifts, there is a specialized, resilient family of glass known as borosilicate. By weaving the element boron into the silica lattice, the glassmakers create a material with a remarkably low coefficient of thermal expansion. Imagine a microscopic net that is so strong, so perfectly balanced, that it refuses to grow larger when the fire touches it, and refuses to shrink when the ice bites. This is the secret of the laboratory flask and the baking dish. Objects that can travel from the freezing dark of a refrigerator directly into the searing orange heart of a preheated oven without a single microscopic shiver of fear. It is a material that has mastered the art of internal stability, holding its shape and its peace regardless of the chaos unfolding in the world outside. A steadfast, crystalline calm that remains entirely unchanged by the rising or falling of the tide. And as this steadfast calm settles within your own chest, you feel your breathing become a slow, unwavering anchor, a steady rhythmic pulse that remains perfectly still even as the world around you fades. You are safe, you are whole, and you are deeply, profoundly at rest. This internal molecular stability eventually shrinks down, condensing into the tiny, vibrant, and incredibly powerful units of historical exchange, the trade beads. Imagine a heavy wooden chest filled with thousands of these miniature fire-polished jewels clicking together with the sound of 1,000 tiny glass pebbles. For centuries, these beads were the currency of the sun, travelling from the specialised furnaces of Venice and Bohemia to the furthest reaches of the globe. They were not just glass, they were a language of value and connection. Some were drawn from long, hollow tubes, while others were wound around a rotating wire, creating patterns of stripes, dots, and eyes that were believed to ward off the shadows. The most famous among them, the chevron bead, was created by layering star-shaped moulds of blue, white, and red glass, which were then ground away to reveal a complex geometric flower. These tiny fragments of the furnace were traded for gold, for ivory, and for the very spices that flavoured the history of the world. A testament to the idea that something small, beautiful, and forged in the fire can hold a value that transcends the passage of many long, quiet centuries. The clicking, rhythmic history of the trade beads leads us back to the most critical, pivotal moment in the life of any blown vessel, the transfer to the pontil rod. Imagine the gaffer, holding the long, hollow blowpipe with a nearly finished vase still attached at the mouth. To finish the top, they must first grab the piece from the bottom. An assistant approaches with a solid, heavy steel rod, the pontil or punty, tipped with a small glowing gather of fresh, molten glass. With a precise, synchronized movement, the assistant presses the punty against the exact center of the vessel's base. The hot glass acts as a temporary glowing glue. Then, with a single, sharp tap on the blowpipe and a drop of cold water at the neck, the glass snaps free from its original source. The vessel is now held only by its base, its mouth wide open and exposed to the air for the first time. It is a moment of profound vulnerability and transformation, a leap of faith where the glass is handed from one support to another, allowing the artist to finally open the form, to shape the lip, and to invite the light to fill the interior space. And as you feel this transfer of weight, you feel the heavy burdens of your own day being handed over, released into the quiet care of the night. Your mind is open, your spirit is light, and you are drifting deeper into the warmth. The sharp, decisive snap of the pontil rod eventually gives way to a slow, mechanical river of cooling, the journey through the lair. In the modern glass studio, the intense, high-stakes heat of the furnace is followed by the long, patient patience of the annealing oven. A leer is often a long, tunnel-like conveyor belt that moves with an almost imperceptible slowness. The hot glass is placed at one end, where the air is still thick with a dull red warmth. As the belt carries the vessel through the long dark tunnel, the temperature is dropped by only a few degrees every hour. This mechanical patience ensures that the internal stresses of the glass are whispered away, grain by grain, until the material is completely at peace. A piece might travel for 30 or 40 feet, a journey that takes a full day or more before it finally emerges into the cool air of the studio at the other end. It is a pilgrimage of cooling, a slow industrial meditation that proves that the most lasting strength is built through the gradual, gentle release of pressure over time. While the layer oven slowly removes the heat, the high-tech vacuum chamber of a modern mirroring facility removes the very air itself to create a surface of absolute reflection. We have spoken of the silvered mirrors of the past, but the mirrors of the future are born in a realm of physical vapor deposition. Imagine a massive stainless steel bell jar from which every single molecule of air has been sucked out until it is as empty as the space between the stars. Inside this void, a high-voltage electrical arc strikes a target of pure aluminum or silver, vaporizing the metal into a fine, glowing mist of individual atoms. Because there is no air to stop them, these metal atoms fly in perfectly straight lines, coating the surface of a glass sheet with a layer that is so thin it is measured in the width of a single wave of light. This is how we create the mirrors for the world's great telescopes and the precision optics of our digital age. It is a process of atomized perfection, a way to create a surface so smooth and so reflective that the glass itself effectively vanishes, leaving only a flawless, shimmering doorway into a world of pure light. And as the glass vanishes in your mind, you feel your own sense of self dissolving, merging with the soft, shimmering dark around you. There is no boundary. There is only the light and the quiet. The absolute reflection of the vacuum-coated mirror leads us to a secret, dark mystery held within the most intense colours of the furnace, the black glass. To the naked eye, a thick, heavy vessel of this material looks as dark as a starless midnight, a solid void that swallows every photon that touches it. But the truth is far more beautiful. If you hold a thin shard of this black glass up to the blinding white glare of the sun, the secret is revealed. It is not black at all, but a deep, fathomless purple, or a rich, dark emerald green, so densely packed with cobalt, manganese, or iron that the light can barely fight its way through. It is a colour of profound concentration, a liquid shadow that reveals its true soul only when it is challenged by the light. It reminds us that there is often a vibrant, hidden depth within the things that seem the most dark and impenetrable, a secret world of colour waiting for a single, focused ray of light to awaken its hidden heart. The concentrated depth of the dark glass finds its human rhythm in the dedicated, high-speed choreography of the bit boy, the gaffer's indispensable assistant. While the master gaffer focuses on the main body of the work, the assistant is constantly moving back and forth from the smaller furnaces, known as glory holes or colour pots. Their task is to bring a small, perfectly timed gather of molten glass, a bit, to the gaffer exactly when it is needed. This bit might become a handle, a foot, or a decorative trail. The timing must be absolute. If the bit is too cold, it won't fuse. If it's too hot, it will run like water. The assistant must present the glowing liquid gather at exactly the right height and angle, often holding it steady while the gaffer shears it off with a sharp metallic snip. It is a relationship built on a profound, unspoken trust, a rhythmic exchange of fire and steel that allows a complex form to be built piece by piece, bit by bit, in a state of continuous flowing creation. The rhythmic, healthy teamwork of the studio stands in stark, melancholic contrast to the slow, weeping decay of chrysaling, the heartbreak of glass disease. In the long, quiet centuries of museum archives, some ancient glass vessels begin to undergo a strange and tragic transformation. If the original chemical recipe was imbalanced, too much alkali perhaps, or not enough lime, the glass begins to react with the microscopic moisture in the air. Tiny invisible cracks begin to spiderweb through the surface, and the glass begins to cry, secreting small, salty droplets of moisture that look like beads of sweat. Over decades, the glass loses its transparency, becoming cloudy and brittle, eventually crumbling into a fine white powder. It is the only way that glass can truly die. It is a reminder of the delicate, precarious balance required to create something that lasts, a chemical harmony that must be perfect at the moment of birth if the vessel is to survive the long, humid centuries of existence. And as you feel this delicate balance within yourself, you feel every cell in your body finding its own perfect harmony, a quiet, chemical peace that sustains you. You're durable, you're stable, and you are deeply at rest. We have spoken of how these threads carry. We have spoken of how these threads carry light, but we must consider the level of purity required to make that possible. If you were to look through a block of the glass used in these fibers that was 10 miles thick, it would be as clear as a pane of window glass. Every single impurity, every microscopic grain of dust, and every stray atom of iron has been meticulously, chemically removed. This glass is so pure that a pulse of light can travel for 50 miles before it loses even half of its strength. It is a material that has been refined to the absolute limit of human capability, a substance that is more nothing than something, a clear, solid void through which the thoughts and voices of the world can travel at the speed of light. It is the ultimate expression of the glassmaker's art. A material that has achieved such a state of purity that it has effectively become invisible, leaving only the light to tell its story. As you too become invisible in the dark, leaving only the quiet, rhythmic light of your dreams to guide you home. This ultimate purity, this invisible thread of light that spans the globe, leads us finally to the most profound secret of all, the secret of the eternal return. In the world of the furnace, there is no such thing as an ending, only a transition into a new state of being. Every grain of sand that today flows like liquid honey on the end of a blowpipe was once part of a towering ancient mountain, ground down over millions of years by the patient, rhythmic breathing of the sea. And every piece of glass that has ever been shattered, every discarded fragment of a Roman cup or a medieval window, carries within it a molecular memory that can never be truly erased. When glass is returned to the fire, it does not die. It is simply remembered. The heat reaches into the frozen lattice and releases the tension, allowing the atoms to dance once again in their liquid, chaotic joy. There is a beautiful, hidden immortality in this material. A glass blower working today might be shaping a gather that contains the exact same molecules that once held the wine of a pharaoh or the tears of a forgotten queen. Because glass can be melted and remelted an infinite number of times without ever losing its fundamental essence, it exists outside the linear march of human time. It is a material that has mastered the art of beginning again, a substance that views the concepts of broken or finished as merely temporary pauses in a much larger circular journey. It teaches us that nothing is ever truly lost, only reshaped. That the light we hold today is the same light that has been travelling through the silica for eons. The final secret is that you, like the glass, are a part of this endless shimmering cycle. You are a vessel for the light, a temporary beautiful form shaped by breath and fire, resting now in a state of perfect crystalline potential, waiting for the next dawn to reveal the next version of your own brilliant unfolding story. The roaring voice of the furnace is dimming now, fading into a soft, low and distant hum that sounds like the very edge of a dream. The brilliant orange glare of the glory hole has softened into a deep, comforting cherry red, and then deeper still into a quiet, shadowy crimson that barely brushes against the darkness. The heavy steel pipes have been laid to rest on their wooden racks, and the tools, the jacks, the shears, the paddles, are cooling in the stillness, their work for the day entirely complete. You can feel the heat of the studio slowly radiating away, replaced by the cool, velvet touch of the night air. And as this knowledge settles, your breathing slows. The 101 wonders we have explored together are no longer facts to be remembered, but seeds of light planted deep within the vast, silent library of your subconscious. They are drifting now, floating like microscopic bubbles of air within a cooling glass sphere, settling into their final perfect places. You do not need to hold on to them. You do not need to think about them anymore. Like a vessel placed into the long dark tunnel of the lair, you're beginning your own journey of annealing, a slow, gentle release of all the internal stresses and tensions of the waking world. Your body is becoming heavy and stable as a solid crystal base. Your mind is becoming clear and quiet as the deepest optical void. The world outside has vanished, replaced by the rhythmic, peaceful tide of your own breath. There is no more fire, there is no more movement, there is only the stillness, there is only the dark. The journey is complete, and the vessel is whole. You're cradled in the soft, protective insulation of the night, where the only light is the faint, fading glow of the stars mirrored in the quiet glass of your dreams, sinking deeper, cooling further, resting entirely. And now 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.